Horror Virgin family, we're conducting an audience survey. Don't you want to tell us stuff?
We know you do.
Yes.
That survey we're conducting is over at gum.fm/horrorvirgin, and we want to hear from you so we can keep making the content you love.
You know we've got ads. You've heard them. You listen to this podcast.
I've done a few.
More than me.
It's not a race.
It's not a race. It's fine.
I control the means of production, Paige.
That's right. But we want the ads to be things that you actually want to hear about.
Yes.
And so in order to improve that experience, we need to know a little bit more about you, our audience.
And the survey is quick and easy and a free way to support the podcast.
Yeah, it helps us out.
Yeah, it'll take you like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like one Factor meal.
And it's almost as delicious.
So close. So go to gum.fm/horrorvirgin to fill out our audience survey. That's gum.fm/HORRORVIRGIN. Horror Virgin.
I'll take that a little slower just in case. HORRORVRGIN, or Horror Virgin for you at home. You're listening to it.
You know what the show's called. You spelled it when
Yeah.
you Googled it. You guys figured it out.
Yeah.
We believe in you. Please do the survey, though. It really does help.
Yay.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
With Credit Karma, finding the right credit card for you is easy. Our app analyzes user profiles to suggest personalized recommendations. Visit creditkarma.com today to explore cards tailored to your needs. Credit Karma, simplifying your financial choices.
Hey, Horror Virgin fam, Todd here. I know it's Thursday, and normally you don't hear from me on Thursday unless you're a Romance in the Pod listener, but because it's Halloween and we recorded a special Halloween episode for Romance in the Pod that I think you might be interested in, I'm going to go ahead and just drop our Lisa Frankenstein episode in this feed as well so you all can enjoy it. And listen, if you guys like the Lisa Frankenstein episode, you're like, oh, this is a lot like what I like on Horror Virgin, but it's about a romantic movie. Maybe you should also be listening to Romance in the Pod. Who am I to judge and tell you what to do? Do what you want to do, but I'm just saying, you'll like it, I promise. Anyway, here's our Lisa Frankenstein episode. We hope you guys enjoy it. Love you. Enjoy the highest of holidays here at the Horror Virgin on Halloween, and we will see you on Monday for an Alien Romulus episode that slaps.
Better not have no plans tonight.
Movie time and it's feeling right.
You're looking for a love that lasts. You'll find it at Romance in the Podcast. Ooh, ooh, baby, you had me at hello. Ooh, I love you.
I know.
Ooh, ooh, baby, you're the wind beneath my wings. Ooh, ah, I'll have what she's having.
I hit record.
On the wings of
Love, I'm gonna cut a dick off and put it in my pocket.
On the wings of love.
Let's just start.
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello, because it's Halloween. It's spooky. I'm Paige. Hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
And I'm Todd Schlosser. And this week, Paige made us watch
Lisa Frankenstein!
So, Paige, I first want to say, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I took my medicine today and I watched this movie. I know this is not the first time you saw it. It is the first time I saw it.
Sure.
I want to know what you thought about it the first time you saw it.
Sure.
Because there was a lot of hype going into it. Like, is this Diablo Cody?
It is.
She did Juno, which was a hit, a mega hit.
Right.
She did Jennifer's Body after that, which wasn't a hit.
Sleeper hit.
But cult classic hit.
Yes.
Now is considered a hit, I would say.
Right.
At least in the horror community of which we are both a part of because of the other show we do, right?
Correct.
So, like, what did you think seeing this the first time?
So here's my thing. Because I didn't see this in theaters. I wanted to, but just scheduling wise, it did not happen. Like,
Yeah. I'll go ahead and say, because I just did the research on this, it was only in theaters for 4 weeks.
yeah, it was not in very long. It did not do well.
No.
I liked it instantly.
Sure.
I like it more every time I watch it.
I do think, okay, I think that's like a Diablo Cody's sweet spot.
Yes.
Because she is so good at writing in a way that like is fun, good-natured, you're enjoying it.
Yes.
But it really packs in shit you don't notice the first time.
Yep.
And you're like, oh man, that was a good joke I missed the first time. Like, I like people who can write that way. And Diablo Cody, every one of her movies for me has been that way.
Yeah, and here's my thing. I understand why other people might not like this movie.
Me too, Paige.
I really do.
AKA me as other people.
I'm sure. But I also feel that way about Jennifer's Body, where I feel like it's not for everybody, but sometimes it is aggressively for a person. And that person be me. Because, like, I also liked Jennifer's Body initially when I saw it and everyone else hated it. For me, this movie, it's not as good as Jennifer's Body. I will absolutely admit that.
It's not.
I feel like it's interesting in that it takes some of the similar relationships of Jennifer's Body and flips them. And that's not always successful. And I think that's why people maybe don't like this one as much, because it's hard to empathize and root for somebody that is a serial killer. And that is absolutely what is happening.
Yeah.
Lisa is a bad person.
Yeah.
Lisa is the villain of this movie. And I exist in a place where I can acknowledge that, and that is okay with me. And I still really enjoy watching it in the same way that you watch a Jason or a Freddy kill people.
Yes.
Where you're like, okay, yes.
I think the difference in between this and like a Jason or a Freddy type slasher.
You're not supposed to empathize with them. They're not the main character.
Right. The movie is not aggressively like, isn't Jason a great dude? He's always helping out that underprivileged hockey team. Like, it's, he's like, no.
The more I watch this, I do think the movie layers in some subtle things of like, by the way, she's crazy, but it's not blatant about it. It's not obvious about it. And so I fully understand people watching this for a first time and being like, oh, no, this doesn't quite hit for me. But I also feel the same way in some ways about Jennifer's Body, because there are parts of Jennifer's Body where you're like, get him! And like, she is also the villain. But this movie blurs that line way too much. That's where I think it's the least successful. However, the place where I think it's the most successful is Cole Sprouse's performance, where the man has one line in this movie. One.
You mean before the Notting Hill ending?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it really is just like, he is the Groot of this movie.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I do think that's incredible. I think it's wild what he did.
I think he does a good job. Yeah.
He did a great job. The soundtrack slaps. Every outfit is great. The style of this movie is a wild 90s fever dream, and I love it. I also, after seeing this multiple times, have formulated two potentially different theories. One that makes Lisa an even bigger villain than you think the first time you see the movie.
Oh, that she killed her own mom?
I think she might have killed her own mom.
I think she probably did. Based on what we see in this movie, like, yeah, she probably did.
I think it's possible that she did. I think you could read this movie that way. I think it's possible that she didn't. And this is a hurt people scenario, but she is taking it way too far. And she is the villain, right? No matter what. Anyway you slice it, she's the villain.
Yeah.
I also think there's a version where maybe her dad killed her mom. And that's something I thought about a little bit this time too.
I actually thought that early on in the movie, so I'm not going to say that that's out of the realm of possibility. Absolutely.
The only thing after watching it this time that I was like, maybe not, is he seems to be just kind of aimlessly floating through life in a way that suggests he doesn't have the, like, what's the word? Organization, drive, I don't know, to kill a person.
I don't think he would have gotten away with it. Yeah. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
And I also think either her mom was killed by an axe murderer or Lisa Frankenstein killed her.
Right.
And the only reason I say that is because, like, I think he would be in jail for her murder because he would have done it in a terribly.
Right. He would not have.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't have pulled it off.
And also, like, she is cuckoo bananas terrible in this movie. movie. Like, she is the villain. Like, we're essentially watching Hellraiser if Hellraiser thought Julia was the hero of the movie. And that's 1000% what's going on the whole time.
I will say, on subsequent viewings, it seems less and less like the movie views her as the hero.
Yeah.
But because it's done in such a campy, heightened way, it is hard for that to translate.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the problem. I think either the people that she kills have to be worse, because, like, the first couple, you're like, I don't feel so bad, right? Like, but then it escalates and then it gets less worse.
Exactly. Because, like, the stepmom, I should say, was pretty terrible to Lisa Frankenstein. Maybe didn't deserve to die, but, like, in the movie.
And she's not the one who kills her. The monster does.
Yeah, and, like, in the movie realm, like, you can sort of justify it.
Sure.
The guy who does sexually assault her, like,
right,
loses his hand, and I thought maybe that was enough, but no, they kill him too. And then, like, they just, like, kill the guy who wasn't into her, I guess, is the thing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's when it reaches full natural born killers status, because it's an escalation like most killers do.
Yeah.
Where it's like the first two, you're like, okay, and then you're like, oh no. No. But that's where on multiple viewings, when you know what's going to happen and you watch the escalation over and over again, you're like, the movie was trying to tell us.
Yeah.
But we missed it behind Taffy, who we love. And who is potentially one of my favorite characters in the movie.
She's just like a good, nice person. And for that, her sister kills her mom.
Her sister kills her mom and the guy she was sleeping with.
Oh, yeah.
And probably eventually would have killed her.
Oh, definitely would have killed. Yes, definitely would have killed her. Yeah.
The scene with the two of them in the car.
When she gives her the necklace?
Yes.
Yeah.
On multiple viewings. I think on an initial viewing, I was like, Jesus Christ, this movie is nuts. On multiple viewings, I think that's one of the places where the movie is like, she's a murderer. Like, she's a villain.
Yeah.
Like, Taffy is traumatized. Like, Taffy is not okay.
Right,
and
no.
this is not campy and fun anymore. She is covered in blood and screaming and is going to stumble back to her house. And now it's not this, oh, fun, you dropped a sewing machine on my mom. It's a very real, they have killed 4 people.
Oh, yeah. Taffy is covered in her undercover lover's dick blood.
Right.
Like, she has been through a lot in the past hour.
A lot.
But yeah, so, like, it's hard for me to enjoy the movie when essentially the movie's like, isn't it fun to, like, hang out with the murderer? Like, the first Joker movie felt very similar in the sense that we're, like, following this, like, supposed bad character, although in the musical sequel it turns out he wasn't the Joker. I don't know, I haven't watched it.
I don't know, I didn't enjoy the first one at all, and so I was kind of like,
yeah, I mean the first one is just like a ripoff of 2 great 70s films, but whatever. Anyway, but it felt like that. It felt like we were watching the same sort of thing, like, okay, we're gonna watch the villain the whole time. And, like, it was hard for me because this movie makes it really seem like Julia was right in Hellraiser to do what she was doing. Like, that is the position of Diablo Cody writing this movie. She was like, no, you definitely just kill people in your life and steal from them to build your dream, man. It's fine.
So here's my opposite take on it. This is a spiritual sequel to Jennifer's Body. I do think Jennifer's Body is better. I do think she got to spend more time on Jennifer's Body, and I think that's part of it. The tagline for Jennifer's Body, and I think it should be the tagline for this too, is hell is a teenage girl. And I think they're both explorations of the more extreme emotions and bad parts of being a teenage girl. And it's this heightened place of like, yeah, these are awful. These are evil. But like, here are some of the real emotions that sit behind that. And this is the worst possible way it can go.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy both movies in that way. I can fully admit, Lisa's the villain. Do I cackle every time that shadow of a dick flies across the wall? Absolutely. The music choice is insane. But more than that, especially on subsequent viewings, I find myself following Taffy even more because Taffy has some of the funniest lines in this fucking movie.
Oh, yeah.
100%. But then also really looking at where the movie shifts from this really stylized piece. So I think a lot of the times in the movie, when we're seeing that stylized view, we're seeing Lisa's delusions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're seeing her. That's her version.
I don't think the Sprouse character, the zombie dude, is ever there at all, ever in reality.
That's an interesting reading of the movie,
Yeah.
and I can't disagree with you. I would say that you could absolutely read the movie that way, and that he only exists in that stylized reality.
Yes.
Versus the cold, hard light of day, where Taffy is covered in blood and screaming,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh no, this is the reality.
Yeah.
This is what's actually happening. And unfortunately, within the movie, it happens at 18 minutes before the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So I think what a lot of it is a bit of a pacing issue where the movie does not make it clear enough until that late in the movie that, like, yo, this person you may have been rooting for, you shouldn't have been rooting for them.
Yeah.
And the movie understands it, but too late.
It's like if you go on a date with somebody and they're like, yeah, no, I really love Lisa Frankenstein. And you're like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have some follow-up questions to that.
Sure.
Like, what did you love about it? Like, what did you like? And if they're like, yeah, I just really loved Lisa's character. I thought she was awesome. You'd be like, cool, this is the last date we're going on.
This is the last day where, but if somebody answered you, they're like, I know she's a villain, but I love the camp and the stylization, and I do really like it.
Oh, I'd be like, yeah, me too. I cackled when she said, damn it, Janet, because I'm a whore
So good.
for Rocky Horror Picture Show references. So, like, yeah.
Okay, but let me ask you something about Rocky Horror Picture Show. Do you like Dr. Frankenfurter?
Yes.
Because he's the villain.
I know. But the movie positions him as the villain the whole time. Like, he's just an awesome fucking villain. Yeah.
That movie does it better. And I feel like
Yeah.
Jennifer's Body also does it better.
I agree, yeah.
Where it's clearer and you're like, it makes it feel a little bit better to root and laugh along with that villain as opposed to Lisa. So, like,
Yeah.
either I feel like the people Lisa kills have to be more evil. I think the first two we can live with, the last 2 to 3 we cannot.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the problem. Or Lisa has to be so much more evil that we know we should not be rooting for her at all.
Yeah.
But it sits in the middle. That's why I think it's not as good as Jennifer's Body, but I still enjoy it quite a bit. I do think some of the writing is really hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And it is peak 90s girl nostalgia. If you grew up as a woman in the 90s in America, there are so many tiny Easter eggs of things for you in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, Diablo Cody all of her movies are written that way, where it's just like the dialogue is like fun and they're smash packed full of jokes. I loved it.
This is, I would say, the most digestible Diablo Cody dialogue, where it's not flowery, it's very blunt.
Yeah. And there's less like slang from the time.
Yes.
That makes it a little inaccessible to those who didn't grow up in it, you know?
Right, and I think Juno's the worst of it, but the best movie, which
I know, I love
think is
Juno.
kind of a
It's so
crazy
great,
dichotomy,
yeah.
right? Jennifer's Body, I think, is a really great mix, but it does hit specifically if you were in high school in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
that's your movie, right? Because, like, it sounds like it, you hear it, whatever.
Also, that song, man, it slaps through
the
trees. So
trees.
good. Whatever. So great.
This movie has the least flourishes on the dialogue, and for me, it actually makes it some of the most effective joke dialogue.
Yeah.
Because there's not, whatever, it's just people bluntly saying the craziest shit imaginable in plain ass English. But in that, the metaphor and the story of the movie, not quite as clear cut as we have it in Jennifer's Body. So, but I do think that 10 years from now, people will love this. Not quite as much as Jennifer's Body, but a lot more than they did this past year.
I don't think it will ever reach the cult classic level that Jennifer's Body did.
Right.
But I do think that people will be like, oh yeah, and Lisa Frankenstein's fine, I guess. Like I definitely understand why everyone wanted to see this movie when it first came out because of who was behind it.
Sure.
And I definitely understand why everyone stopped talking about it immediately.
Sure.
It was just like when Maxine came out. Like I understood the hype.
Yeah.
The first 2 movies were like very big, like sort of hits.
Yeah.
And then I haven't seen Maxine, so I don't have any real thoughts on
I don't
it.
know.
But I do know when it came out, everyone stopped talking about it immediately.
Immediately. But that was the same with Jennifer's Body. And I
Yeah.
almost think about something like a sleepaway camp, right? So like Sleepaway Camp is one where you're also following the villain the entire time and you don't know they're the villain. But are they the villain? Because bad things happen. Now, granted, they make the people that person kills way worse.
Yeah.
Which is what this movie needs.
I mean, in that movie, the first person she kills, I think, is a full-on pedophile.
A child molester.
In this movie, it's just an arguably terrible stepmom, but like...
who is threatening her.
To send her to like a boarding school. Yeah.
Not a boarding school, dude.
Which we know are bad.
No. She's being institutionalized.
Oh, yeah.
Which she probably the argument I guess you would make is.
Yeah, she should be. Like,
should she
100%.
be? Yes.
The stepmom was literally just trying to save her own life in that moment. So.
But here's what I need. I need some visuals of the stepmom not being evil, and we don't get them.
Yeah, we only get Lisa's perspective on people and the world around her.
So either she needs to be physically abusive, like...
Yes, she needs to be evil.
Right. And I think she's very close. I think that one you get close...
I think in hindsight, because at the point the mom dies in the movie, I did not know we were only living inside just Lisa Frankenstein's reality, and there's no actual reality that we're being shown.
But also, if the monster is real, and we have to examine that because that's what's on the screen.
Yeah.
The monster kills her mom. Lisa doesn't.
Sure.
Lisa does nothing to facilitate that. And so, like, that's an accident. But then later, when she's talking about it, she's like, it actually made me feel really good, but then I was an accomplice. And that's when you start to see the cold light of day of like, she is evil. But this is what I'm saying. That's the main problem with this movie. But I don't think it'll prevent it from getting more love later because it does get better on subsequent watches. So I think as people revisit it, they might actually like it more. I just think it was a hard pill to swallow on a first watch.
Oh, yeah. This is a hard movie to wake up and watch this morning before we recorded. Yeah.
Yeah. I think going into it knowing she's the villain makes it a much more pleasant watch.
But it makes me like really wonder if the stepmom was actually like just a really great person.
I don't think so, no.
I don't know. We never really meet any character in this movie. We only see Lisa's perception of that character.
Except that we don't because of the scene with just the monster and her, and we know Lisa's somewhere else.
Just the monster and who?
When Lisa's at school and the monster is home with the mom when he puts the worm in her food.
Well, the mom doesn't see that.
No, she eats it.
I know. She doesn't see the monster, though.
She doesn't.
So the worm could have been put in the food before she put it all together.
It could have been.
So yeah, that doesn't mean that the monster's real, but I understand what you're saying.
But again, that's something that we don't see on the screen, so we don't know. I would say there's a lot of, even just in passing, when other characters are there in conversations that are happening, that to me as a girl who grew up in the diet culture, pop psychology 90s, that mom is not a good person. Like, she is at minimum verbally abusive, and it would have probably escalated. That doesn't mean you kill that person, but she ain't not a good mom.
My only point with all of that is you don't know.
Right.
Because all we're seeing is Lisa's interpretation of her stepmom, not her stepmom.
Right.
Does that make sense? So like, I'm not saying you're wrong. She might be bad.
Yeah.
We don't know because we only see that filtered through Lisa Frankenstein's brain.
If that's what we're seeing. But what is real, what is not, that's a bit of a debate, and the movie does not officially tell us.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
It's real frustrating.
We could be seeing full real life, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, the 80s were wild, so it could have just been like
this. It's definitely
Who knows?
1992 or 3.
It's 1989, it says in the description of the movie.
Is it 89? Okay, that's very close, but 89 makes sense.
But yeah, maybe we should just go through this movie scene by scene so we can get into it.
Let's do it. We open on credits. Now, the animation of the credits, which I did not know the first time, the credits tell the story of how Cole Sprouse's character died. And that he loved a lady, he played music for her, she left him for someone else, and then he was struck by lightning while waiting for her on that park bench. That's how he ends up in that cemetery. And that's why lightning can wake him up again. But again, if you're watching it for the first time, you're just like, it's the credits, and you don't. That is lost.
Oh, you're like, oh, Tim Burton did the credits? Cool.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I mean, he didn't, but it looks like that. They stole like that. They didn't steal it, but like it's an homage to that sort of art style.
Yeah.
Which I like. I didn't hate it. It's very Nightmare Before Christmas. You know, it's like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. But it is very, very short. The credits are not very long. And so it's this feeling of, oh, should I be paying attention to this? Too late. So I'm here to tell you, if you haven't watched this movie, you should be paying attention. It's important to the story. They probably should have put it somewhere that wasn't the credits, but...
I'll also say this, not at all important to the story. You don't need any of that. I didn't know any of that. They never go into it. It never becomes important how he lost his life at all. So, like, you don't need that, but that's fine.
You're right. You could watch the movie without it. The first couple times I did, but like,
yeah, exactly.
I find it important. We open on Lisa making a rubbing of a grave, like not a gravestone, but more like a grave bust, because he's got like a statue above his grave. And it is just the title that says Lisa Frankenstein. And I do kind of love that. And we open on When in Rome, that classic 80s song, the I Promise You, I believe is the name of the song by When in Rome. The
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
I really loved that she was doing the whole, like, she wrote her name and then was like,
and made it Frankenstein below.
Yeah, well, but because that was like the name that she was like stenciling off the grave, right?
It is what she's doing, but it is just for the title card of the movie. That's not his name or her name.
Oh, so you have just told me a thing that made one of the things I loved the most. It makes me sort of hate it. I hate that that is not his last name. I'm sorry. Her boyfriend, the dead guy, who honestly isn't her boyfriend, she doesn't even realize she's in love with him. She like friend zones Cole Sprouse or whatever in this movie until he takes the dude's dick that she actually wanted to fuck. And then she's like, I guess I'll secondhand like bang this dude now because he's around.
That's also the part that I didn't love as much. For me, I think, again, she'd still be the villain, but if he was killing people to become whole again and she's kind of taken along for the ride because she falls in love with him, it's still not great. But like that to me makes more emotional sense for a movie.
Right.
But then we don't get that On the Wings of Love needle drop. And so,
I love it. Here's why I liked it initially, though.
Sure.
I thought that was the dead guy's last name, and it felt very reminiscent of like when you were like into someone at school and you would like write their name and and like your name and their last name. You know what I'm saying? Like that whole thing, like in your Trapper Keeper or whatever. This felt like the Mary Shelley version of that. Like she's just hanging out in a graveyard, fell in love with the bust. You know, we've all been there. Like, you've seen a stone face and been like, I'd fuck that face.
I mean,
if it was like on a body.
Sure.
So like you go and like write your name really pretty on like, you know, what looks like what you wrap sandwiches in at a deli, or what they pull across the doctor's office chair they have you sit on. Anyway.
Whatever they use in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Yeah, whatever.
It's like a scroll or whatever. But she like writes her name pretty and then goes and like does the thing where she like steals it from the grave, you know, where she like puts the paper over it and like rubs the crayon on it. And I thought that was like a fun, like, oh, that's really cute. And it works into the Frankenstein and why it's called Lisa Frankenstein, because that's his last name. But it's not. It's just stupid. And they ruined it. Ugh. You ruined it, Paige.
Here's why it can't be his last name. 2 reasons. Number 1, Frankenstein is the name of the doctor, not the monster. So Lisa Frankenstein being her name makes more sense.
Her name isn't Lisa Frankenstein, though.
I know.
And
can I finish a point?
Well, your first point isn't invalid necessarily. It just doesn't mean that his name couldn't be Frankenstein.
The reason it can't be Frankenstein, or at least from what we see in the movie, is because we can tell she has borrowed multiple letters from different graves. They're all different sizes.
Man, I hate that. I wish they had made it easier on themselves and their art department and had just made it like thematically better.
I mean,
whatever. It's fine.
It doesn't bother me because I feel like it's them just making the title of the movie, and the movie is telling you, hey, she's about to sew together a dead guy. And maybe she's a spooky girl, and that's why she made it Lisa Frankenstein and is just using part of his name. And neither of those explanations bother me. But
well, I think the problem is they don't give you an explanation for it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like I just assumed it was like the fun version that I thought it was. I actually liked it when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's super cute. I love that. And then you ruined it for me just now by telling me the truth.
I also think that if somebody's last name was Frankenstein and they were in a local graveyard, that'd be like a thing people would go see. And like that graveyard has to be basically abandoned.
It is abandoned, more or less.
Because that's how she gets away with it, you know? And so like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But no, as far as I know from the movie and from multiple watches, I think we do get his last name, but it's not Frankenstein. And I know that hers is Lisa Swallows.
Yeah, her last name is Swallows.
But within the movie, they call him the Creature. So I think we probably get a brief view of that bust, and I didn't write down the actual name. But I do know that in that scene when she's taking the rubbing, the letters are from multiple different graves.
Okay.
And that's why you get the kind of cool logo. Anyway, we cut to back at her house where she's trying to get ready for a party and she's not doing great. And this is where we first meet her stepsister, Taffy for president. First of all, the name Taffy is fucking hilarious. That is a name that would have happened back at the time that we definitely did not keep naming people. I think it's also probably short for something. We never find out what, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, what could Taft be short for other than like Taffany? I don't.
In my mind, it's Taffany.
Taffany,
like,
yeah.
like Tiffany, but Taffany.
That's exactly what I thought too. And I was like, there's got to be like an obvious one. And I was like, I'm not going to bring it up because listeners will yell at me this like very obvious name that could be shortened to Taff. But I don't know. I still can't think of one.
I think it could be Taffany, which is hilarious to me. Or Daphne. Like Stephanie, but with an A, and then it's Taffy for short in the middle?
Stephanie? What are you going to be, an HR like person? You can't. No. This is no.
No. Here's why I think that it must be some abbreviate. Either her name is Taffy, and there is no like Kathy, like Patty, Taffy, or it's short for like Taffany because her parents call her Taffy.
Yeah.
So like it can't just be a school nickname, although she does say she's like, I'm easygoing, I'm cool, I'm Laffy Taffy, which is clearly her school name. Like
if her name was actually like Jessica, but everyone called her Taff because she thought she was like Laffy Taffy and she was like, she made everyone call her Laffy Taffy in 6th grade. And then they just shortened it to Taff.
It just stuck.
And it just stuck. It's like the reason we called that guy Cheese until after he graduated high school. I learned his name at graduation and I met him in the 7th grade. Like,
oh God,
that's a real story in my life. His name?
Yeah.
Brian Stanley. It was like a normal name. Paige, I played in a band with this guy for 6 years of my life.
And called him Cheese the whole time.
Well, most of the time. I didn't learn his name until graduation. We played for a little bit after graduation. But yeah, most of the time, his name was Cheese.
I think I've talked about Baby Arm on this podcast before, right?
We don't have to bring up Jake's member. Wait, I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. But I think you may have.
I think I have.
Repipe it just for the listeners.
Sure. There was a guy we went to college with who had a very large member and used to walk around naked, and everyone called him Baby Arm. And then my sister and I went to a wedding many years later, and he was there, and we were like, what's Baby Arm's real name? I can't call him Baby Arm at this wedding.
Yeah, I remember
and
this.
then had to like, literally a whole table of our sorority sisters had to like telephone around and be like, John. His name is fucking John.
It's never as good as their nickname, which is why their nickname stuck. Like Cheese, we called him Cheese or Cheeser, and both of those are better than Brian. I love you, Brian. We'll always love you. Cheeser is a better name. And Baby Arm is a better name than any name.
Baby Arm is a way better name.
It's the best name you could be called by a sorority full of women. Please.
I would say like 99% of the time you are right. The nickname is always better. The exception I will say is the guy that I went to high school with. He was actually in my sister's grade, so 2 years below us, that they called Nibbles.
Oh, Nibs.
Nibs.
His name was John Power.
No, his name was Nathaniel.
I think Nibs might be better. I'm going to be honest with you.
It was because he had giant teeth.
Oh, now I feel like a bad person.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things where like, I think people thought he didn't mind and they called him Nibbles for years.
Oh.
And then he was like, can you guys just call me Nathaniel? And everyone was like, oh God, we're bad people. Like, oh no.
Or even like Nathan or N-Dog.
Nate.
You pretty much called him Chompers. Like, anyway, she goes by Taff.
She goes by Taffy.
And Taff for president, which is close to a slogan that they probably used in the early 1900s when it was Taft for president.
But you know what? If Taft was as congenial and charming as Taffy is in this movie, then you know what? I mean, he was already president. I don't know how you can go up from there, but maybe he would have been president twice if not for that bathtub.
Guys, Google it. Taft was the only president I know of to ever get stuck in a bathtub.
Or that might have been a rumor, but it's old times, so who's to say? Anyway, Taffy comes in and is like, hey, that blush is not really your shade, but not in a bitchy way, in an I'm trying to help you way, which is Taffy's MO for the entire movie of like, Taffy is so popular she doesn't understand what other people experience, but she is also good-natured. And so she is always trying to like, oh, don't do that because this will help you be popular. Like, it'll be great. I do that, so you should do that. And it's never done maliciously.
No.
It's only done in friendship, and that's what makes Taffy so great.
Yeah.
That's why I love Taffy.
She is a like teenage girl with the like self-awareness to see outside of herself and see what someone else might be going through. And like has a new sister whose mom was either murdered by Lisa or by an axe murderer who broke into their house.
Could be either. It could be either.
And Taff firmly believes the axe murderer story. There's no think that it could possibly be Lisa.
Sure.
So she is just like trying to be the sweetest new sister that Lisa could ever have the entire movie. And it makes you love Taff.
Yes.
Like you really do.
Yes.
But you're right. She is like 80s cheerleader.
Yes.
Like coded as hot. Coded as like friendly and like very social, which is normally the villain in these kind of movies.
Yes.
So like, yeah, I did like the way they flipped that.
This is how I think of this in relation to Jennifer's Body a little bit too, because in Jennifer's Body, Jennifer is the popular cheerleader and she is the villain, right?
Yes.
That's our classic 80s version. And in this movie, the needy character, which would be Lisa, is the villain. It is the flip of the two. In that flip, I think it's maybe a little less successful because of assumed societal norms. Like when we first see Taffy, we're ready to see her as the villain. And I think it's kind of interesting that the movie flips that. But I don't know that we're ready to see Lisa as the villain unless you've already seen it once before. And you kind of know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we do find out in this scene that Taffy was Junior Miss Hawaiian Tropic, which is a thing that has not existed, or maybe it still does, but as far as I know, has not existed for a while since skin cancer became more known about, because it used to be like a beauty pageant around a tanning oil and tanning bed company. And that's why she won a tanning bed that lives in a shed in their backyard, which again is also hilarious to me.
I did Google it.
Is it still happening?
Yes, there was in 2018 they did it.
Okay.
They did a Miss Hawaiian Tropic. I don't know if it was junior. It was definitely just Miss Hawaiian Tropic, you know. And it in the movie it is junior Hawaiian Tropic, but
I mean, which I assume they probably had most beauty pageants have a ton of different levels.
Yeah, and they might still, I don't know. And it looks like the last time they may have done it was 2018, I think.
Now, Hawaiian Tropic did move into sunscreen, so it could be that that's how they're playing it. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was absolutely a tanning lotion, tanning bed kind of scenario. And that's why she wins a tanning bed. But that was like a thing. It was like one of the biggest beauty pageants in the country was Miss Hawaiian Tropic, especially if you lived in a tropical place, which they do not in this movie. They live somewhere close to Milwaukee. Anyway, she tells Lisa, she's like, hey, maybe you should use my tanning bed. And Lisa's like, oh, okay. And she goes out there and gets immediately electrocuted. But much like Better Off Dead, we immediately cut to them in the car. And she just says, I'm really sorry you got electrocuted. Hysterical.
Yeah, it is pretty funny.
As they're in the car, and this is before anyone's been killed, you have no reason to hate anybody.
Right.
In the car, we have this initial conversation that tells us so much of who Taffy is and who Lisa is in a hysterical way, where we learn that Taffy is maybe not the brightest, but she's so nice, and that Lisa is kind of a pretentious goth girl. And that's fine. We're all teenagers at one point. But this is where Taffy's like, so how are you liking high school? Like, how is it? And she's like, it's exactly like my other high school. And she's just like, okay, but do you have a crush on anyone? She's like, Michael Trent, he's the editor of The Grackle, which is the school's literary magazine that we will find out has published some of her poems. But Taffy does not care about that. Taffy's just like, okay, does he lunch on or off campus? BK or White Castle? Does he have like a basketball body or a baseball body? And she's like, no sports. He's cerebral. And then Taffy just goes, he's in a wheelchair.
Oh my God. I mean, I was like, oh my God. Because, you know, Taff isn't the brightest. She's just sweet.
Taff is not the brightest.
Right.
Here's my question. Do you think, and I know it's cut, one of these is a long shot. Do you think she thought she meant cerebral palsy?
Yes.
Which might have someone to be in, or do you think she thought she said cerebro? like
No,
Professor X.
I don't think that Taft just is a secret X-Men fan, which I do think in 89 she could have been.
She could have been.
Absolutely.
It was on TV. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the cartoon and,
But I don't think, I will grant that could be. I don't think it is.
The movie never tells us, but I like picturing Taffy being like the bald guy that tells the future.
Like for 100% Taff at Halloween gets a wheelchair and builds like a cardboard Xavier with like a wheelchair box around it,
Yeah.
wears a bald cap and just goes door to door as Xavier.
I love it.
Like that's how much of a fan she is.
I love that.
No, I don't think that. I think they're trying to code Taff as a little bit dumb, but very sweet.
Yes. But it continues where we find out there's going to be a nitrous tank at this party. And we also find out that the party is literally a few blocks away.
Yeah.
And they still drove because they didn't want to walk through the graveyard. And also because Taffy is wearing jellies. And her comment about, she's like, they'll turn your feet to hamburger meat.
Yeah.
Instead, I was like, this is why I haven't purchased jellies in almost 30 years. Like,
when she said I'm wearing jellies, I was like, I have no frame of reference for what that is at all.
Okay, ask your siblings because growing up, I can guarantee at least one of your siblings owned jellies, and jellies they're like plastic shoes.
Oh, they looked like terrible feeling Crocs. Sorry, I just Googled them.
Okay, so that's the mid 90s version. The 80s versions, which you can sometimes still find in vintage stores, and you can buy versions of them today, look more like a Barbie shoe, like a flat. And they've got kind of designs and stuff on them, but they're made of plastic that's like flexible, but it doesn't breathe at all. And so your feet sweat, and they would turn your feet black because they just like collect dirt and form like a paste. But also you would get just gnarly blisters, like horrendously painful. But nobody, like, I don't know if we just didn't think about it or what, but like every girl I know has owned multiple pairs of jellies because every time you're like, surely not again. Surely it won't shred my feet to dust this time. But oh God, jellies. Yeah. Placing it directly in time for me.
Yeah. They seem terrible. I'm sorry you had to put yourself through that, I suppose.
But they had glitter in them. They did often have glitter. They look so cool. So painful to wear.
You know that feeling when your favorite brand really gets you? Deliver that feeling to your customers every time. Memorable moments like these are key to building your business and your brand. Klaviyo turns your customer data into real-time connections across AI-powered email, SMS, and more, making every moment count so you can continue to build smarter, more meaningful relationships with your customers. Build smarter digital relationships with your customers and make every moment count with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com/BFCM.
But she says we can't go through the abandoned cemetery, which we know is where Lisa hangs out, because they do witchcraft there. And this one girl, who I assume is a girl who got pregnant in their class, she says she offered her unborn child to Satan because it's peak satanic panic. That's why the baby has to wear a helmet. No other explanation. Nothing else said. And you're like, I know that's not true, but what is the rest of that story?
The rest of that story is there are many reasons why a baby would have to wear a helmet post-birth.
Right. No, I'm sure.
So, like, the rest of that story is that Taff is sweet but really dumb. Like, Taff is the kind of person that like right now, if they're alive in our universe, they'd be like, I don't know, man, Q's making some good points. Like, they're sweet, but they're just so dumb that they'll fall for anything that someone tells them. And so someone at school made up a thing and they believed it.
I want to hear the made up school rumor. Like,
yeah.
That's what I want. I know that there are a ton of normal, valid reasons for a baby to wear a helmet.
Yeah.
So many. I want the school rumor of like, well, she went into the woods with Goody Proctor. Like, that's what I want.
I mean, that is what, but that's what we heard, Paige, because that's the only version Taff knows.
That's the extent of it. That's all she knows.
And they have done zero research. So they were just like, oh, yeah, it's plausible
Yeah.
that this girl we went to school with could have given their baby to the devil or whatever, and that's why they have to wear a helmet. Thank you for telling me that, Doug. Like,
Oh, no, because they say we don't know Doug. They don't know
oh,
him.
that's true. And Doug's not a great dude. That's why I used his name.
He's a yearbook not pictured, is what they said.
Yeah.
Yearbook not pictured. Anyway, but this is where Lisa's like, it's peaceful and quiet there. I have a favorite, like, grave, and I talk to him sometimes. And Taff is like, that's really weird. And Lisa just goes, well, no one should ever be forgotten, which is a startlingly sweet feeling for a movie that's about to go at a very left turn.
Yeah.
But they get to the party. First off, when Taffy runs into her friends, the first thing she said to one of them is, oh, good, you fixed your bangs. I wasn't going to say anything, but it looked terrible.
Yeah.
You're like, Jesus Christ. But they kind of disperse around the party, and Lisa's looking for something to drink. She runs into Michael Trent and is handed a glass by Tamara, who, on multiple viewings, Tamara is either someone else Michael has friend zoned and is having her own story that involves Lisa and not liking Lisa because she sees Lisa as some sort of weird threat, or Tamara is his sister. The movie doesn't come down either way. I checked the credits. It just says Tamara. I don't know which way it's going.
I don't know what the movie is, I guess, trying to say, but I can tell you what I thought. I thought Tamara was supposed to be another romantic rival
I thought so too.
for that character. What's his name? Michael Trent or whatever?
Michael Trent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to be another romantic rival for Michael Trent, but Michael Trent wasn't into goths, which is what we see Lisa sort of become, and Tamara already is.
Right.
She's very coded as goth, and I would say cerebral, but no, I don't mean in a wheelchair.
Right.
Like, she doesn't really care about sport or whatever. By the way, Michael Trent definitely has a football body. Like,
Yeah.
there is an answer to that question, and it's not he's brainy.
He's brainy.
Because the dude doesn't look brainy. Like, he does not have a I'm a nerd body.
No.
That's Doug. Doug has that body.
He looks apathetic is what I'll say, but I also think
Yes.
some of that is just Hollywood casting.
Oh, me too. And I think the guy who plays him does play him more cerebral, and he's not very into sports and stuff. So, like, I agree with the description they give, but, like, there was a correct answer to Taft's question.
Yeah. Well, and I also think you could read that as Lisa not wanting to seem shallow. Like, it's beneath me to say that, which is, it's not beneath you, girl. But, like,
Yeah.
that's what she perceives, right?
It also might just be her being like, I don't necessarily value that as much as I do value the fact
Sure.
that he is cerebral and I can actually have a conversation with him. Anyway.
And he can contact any mutant
Right.
anywhere.
You don't have any idea how big the reach of Cerebro is, Taff.
Right. You have no idea. But so Tamara, and I do think that if Tamara is a romantic rival, it really bolsters the thing that she yells at Michael later, which if the dick chop doesn't happen, right? Like, let's say that didn't happen. I do think that's a really interesting and valid conversation for her to have.
Yeah.
And it is a little undercut by the dick slice, as much as the dick slice makes me laugh.
You had to say undercut?
Undercut.
You had to say undercut in a scene that, like, involves a dick chop. Okay.
Undercut.
I mean, yeah, I do think that, like, Taft having sex with Michael Trent while knowing that that is her sister's crush is shitty.
Sure.
I don't like that Taft does that. Even though, like, Taft doesn't express romantic interest in Lisa Frankenstein at all, really.
You mean Trent doesn't? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I still think it warrants a conversation. Like,
Yes.
hey, I need to tell you that, like, Michael Trent or whatever came on to me because
Sure.
I know you like him.
Right.
Do you have a problem if I, like, accept those advances?
Sure.
Like, you have to have that conversation. So I do think that, like, Taft is maybe not a total innocent. I don't think she deserves what happens to her, obviously.
No.
But there are things she does that aren't great, because we've been sort of talking about how great she is as a character, and I really do like her as a character. But there are things that she does that I see as flawed, I guess.
Yes, but that's also not the conversation happening in that scene.
No, it's not. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, when Lisa is basically saying to Michael, you only like cool things when it's you. You're the only one allowed to like cool things. But that is kind of bolstered by this idea of, like, if he doesn't like Tamara, because Tamara seems to be very much in that same oeuvre.
Yeah.
It's this idea of he wants someone who doesn't really like anything and just kind of goes along, which as much as we love taffy, that is taffy. And it's this frustration of like, why won't someone like me for the things I'm interested in when we share those interests? Now, I will say, as an adult, you will grow out of this and meet other people with your interests and you will find them. But that for me was a very high school frustration of like, I feel like I'm cool. I feel like I like cool things. Why don't you value that? And in part, it's because I think sometimes high schoolers are still growing into people and figuring out what truly makes them happy in relationships.
I also think it's somewhat normal and natural to be like, I want to find someone who like is nerdy the same way I'm nerdy and is nerdy about the same things I'm nerdy about. But that's just largely like, not even like romantically. I feel like that's a lot of how you build your friend group as an adult.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of my friends now are content creation nerds.
Right.
And I met them because we were doing projects together or whatever. And I just held those people close because I really liked their vibe and they are nerdy the same way I'm nerdy. And I do sort of feel like that's what she's looking for in this moment.
Yes, 100%.
Like, I get that and I understand that desire. And I do like high school is like, it's a small barrel and that's really your world when you're in it. So like, it can be frustrating. I do think for me, it was easier because being in the marching band, like puts you around similar types of nerds, you know, like I would imagine like drama, people feel the same way about drama, right? Like I was around and you see like a lot of like relationships happen in those types of like groups within school because like the nerds that are music nerds are in bands and the drama nerds are in drama and the sports nerds are in sports. So it's like that sort of vibe.
I mean, and this could also be a byproduct of my high school being extremely small. And I realized that.
Yeah. So your barrel's much smaller. Yeah, that's what I mean. And like when you go to college, it gets bigger.
Yes.
And then when you get out of college, it's huge. So like it's easier to find the nerdy friend group that you wish you had in high school.
Well, and for me, and this is my high school experience, there was like 2 girls in high school who were tall, blonde, thin, stereotypically, like society's definition of pretty.
Right.
And then a handful of other girls who were maybe not that, but some similar, thin or pretty in a different way or whatever.
Middle class pretty.
Middle class pretty.
Right? Like if you put him, like you have 2 upper class pretties, you have a bunch of middle class pretties.
And again, I want to be clear, society's definition.
Yes.
All of these women are beautiful, society's definition.
I feel like that was clear from the outset, but yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there of the, 30 or so boys in our senior class, roughly 20 of them tried to date those 2 girls. And were not kind about it.
Yeah, they were high school boys.
They were high school boys.
I'm not saying that that's good or they had any right to be mean, but like that does not surprise me.
Right, yeah. And so it's one of those things where like, and many of them were my friends. Like people that you had friendships with that you were like, we have things to talk about. We have things to hang out about. We have all these things in common. And then you'd be like, hey, do you want to go to homecoming? And they'd be like, why would you ask me that? So like, I see that, like, I very much empathize with Lisa being like, that speech, I was like, oh, yes. And now all of those guys live very boring lives. And I feel like I won. But it is high school boys.
I mean, it's not a competition, but you did.
I did.
And also, I had a very different high school experience. And I think it's largely because I went to a high school where my graduating class was like almost 500 people. So there was like little over 2,000 people in my school. So like the pool, like the barrel that I was talking about is way bigger.
I do think a larger pool, my situation would have probably been very different.
Well, I mean, but look at your life post high school. Like you did find people to date. You found an awesome guy to marry. And like he wasn't the first person you dated.
No.
So like, and you found a friend group and all of that. So like, that's what I mean. Like, and that's what I think when like you hear those like it gets better campaigns to like, like it really does. And a large part of it is because you're just like, oh, I don't have to hold my high school friends close to me if they don't actually support my values or what I'm interested in or things like that.
Right.
I can find other friend groups. And like, that's one of the things that makes life so much better after high school, honestly.
And I mean, fuck those people. Who cares what they think about anything?
Yeah.
Like, but in that moment for her, I was like, I understand this feeling and I wish she hadn't killed people.
Right.
Because if she hadn't killed people, she would just go on to host a college radio show and meet and fall in love with whatever her college version of Michael Trent is. Although she is a sophomore, so she's got like 2 more years of high school, I think they say she's a sophomore. I might be wrong.
Paige, she's dead at the end of this movie, so no.
Oh, no, I know. But like, if that had not happened, I think she would have had like 2 more years where she probably at some point would have dated Michael Trent and he would have been underwhelming.
Oh, yeah. It would have been the worst sex of her life, but probably first sex of her life. And then she would have gone to college and like really met herself, honestly.
A hundo. That's why I'm like, even if you don't go to college, move out.
Yeah.
Go somewhere different.
Move away from your hometown even. Not like you got to get to a city or whatever, but like if you were born in a city and lived in a city, go to a different city.
Yeah.
Like honestly, just broadening your horizons is so valuable to you.
Don't kill people. Take a gap year.
I don't think we should be telling people what they can and can't do. Don't kill people, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so while she has drank what turns out to be a very spiked drink with something in it.
They say PCP. I don't know that it actually is PCP.
I don't think it's PCP.
But all I know is that drink turns her visions into, what is it? Poor Things. The movie Poor Things. Like everything's like fisheye lens and black and white and like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Pabst silent film and it's what she references earlier. There's a lot of references to The Moon, which is that Pabst film.
There is, with the bullet in the eye, which is Pabst.
Yeah. But I think it's like LSD or Molly or ecstasy or something that you would put in liquid.
She wasn't trying to lift a car over her head, Paige. I knew it wasn't PCP.
But like, how hilarious if it was. If she's just like, I am now a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, replacing that other guy who had a bad experience on PCP.
Wait, he didn't cut his dick off, did he? Hang on.
He did.
Oh my
he
God,
did.
Paige, why are all of your references in movies this week dick ripping related?
It seemed fitting for this movie. Anyway, but while that's happening, Taffy is telling her friends the story she knows and understands of what happens to Lisa.
Yeah.
I do love that she's like, I'm not supposed to tell anybody, but I could tell just you. And it starts out as 1 girl, then 2 girls, then 3 girls, then 4 girls. And the crowd just grows.
Yeah.
Until everyone knows Lisa is like the murderer girl.
Or her mom was murdered.
Her mom was murdered.
I don't think at this point, because they position it as an axe murderer broke in and murdered the mom.
When I said murderer girl, I meant had an encounter with an axe murderer, but yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is the only version we get of this story.
Right.
And that is that someone broke into the house. Her mom told Lisa to hide. She did. And by the time Lisa came out, her mom was dead and she called 911, but there was nothing they could do. Now, either one of 2 things is happening. If you take that story at face value, which you can, the screen provides enough evidence for that to happen. There's a scene later where the monster breaks into the house, and I would say it triggers a PTSD response. I would also say that there are some references to Lisa feeling guilty for not helping her mom in that moment. And I think that would be very emotionally affecting and hurtful. And I think you could make a case for that being the true story and Lisa still struggling and then unfortunately becoming the villain of this movie. And I think that's a fine interpretation. I think it's supported by the screen.
Yeah.
I think you could also read this movie as Lisa, for some reason, killed her mother.
Yeah.
And then called the police, and they did not suspect her because she was a little girl. Now, not a little girl, she's a teenager, but the one wrinkle in that interpretation is that when she is talking to the creature later and is talking about the amount of people they have killed, she references them killing the stepmom and saying she was only an accomplice, but it made her feel good. And then she wanted to try with Doug, which would suggest that Doug is maybe her first, which would suggest that potentially she did not kill her mom. Or if she does not recognize that.
I don't think we're ever going to get an answer either way. Yeah.
No.
I mean, and I think that the movie, which again is only through the perspective of Lisa Frankenstein, and we don't actually have real reality, I don't think, in the movie at all. But the movie does not tell us who kills that person, who kills the mom.
Right.
It's just an intruder with an axe.
Yeah. And now, okay, here's the other potential theory / wrinkle, because as Taffy continues the story, her friends are like, well, what about her dad? And she's like, oh, he met my mom 6 months after the murder and they got married and now are a big happy family. And isn't it great? And because Taffy is Taffy, she's not questioning any of that.
Right.
story where there's a lot to question because they're married within 6 months, which I think strongly suggests potentially that her dad was having an affair with Taffy's mom, which I think gives her dad a potential motive.
Well, and Taffy's mom.
And Taffy's mom, either one of them, for killing Lisa's mom. So that is potential too. I will say the dad, as reflected on the screen, does not seem to have the motivation to do that. Taffy's mom, completely different story. But now here's the crazy thing. If you found out that Taffy's mom killed her mom, that changes the story a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
At least with that first kill, I'd be like, yeah, get that bitch.
Get her.
But no, it's not like that.
And even the second one, I'm still kind of like, get him. But like,
oh yeah, me too. Like he does sexually assault her.
yeah.
So like,
and it's about to happen right here. Because essentially, Tamara, I do also love the conversation with Tamara. She's like, hey Tamara, she's like, do I know you? And she's like, we have a couple classes together. She's like, this year? She's like, this semester.
Yeah, like I'll see you Monday in 3 of the 6 classes we attend daily.
Right.
I love that vibe. It's like where you like lean in and stare at somebody like, are you fucking serious? Like,
I love that Tamara's only response is just, bless. Like, that's all she says.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lisa, high like a kite. It's drugs.
Yeah.
And so Taffy encounters Lisa and is like, did you take something? And Lisa's like, now it does kick in instantly, which is weird, but Lisa's just like, oh no. And Taffy just goes, no, you had so much potential, and then walks away into the rest of the party, which is a crazy thing to say. She looks up into the eyes and sees a green storm. If you are following from the credits, the storm in the credits was green, which gives us an indication that the same thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
So she's not having a good time. She's sitting by the couch, staring around, just minding her own business. And who should come up but Doug, who's like, hey, it's Doug, your lab partner. Are you okay? And he's like, let's find a place for you to sit for a bit. And initially he seems like a good guy, but he's like leading her down a hallway and we're like, she was right by a couch. Why not? Like, you know, why didn't he just, but he leads her into a bedroom. She barfs into a trash can and he sits her on the bed and she's just kind of sitting and kind of centering and being calm for a second. But then he's like, you like that? And he is groping her.
The way they reveal it is so creepy, and it I think does a really good job too. And I actually have been sexually assaulted under very different circumstances, but I'd imagine that this is the way it happens to like a lot of women.
Oh yes, yeah.
Specifically, is like you feel like you're in a safe place with someone that's not going to be weird, and then it gets weird like so fast. And the way they do that in the movie is it's like a close-up of her like head, more or less. And then you hear him say, you like that? And it's like in a weird...
Yeah, he says, what does he say? Does it feel good? And you're like, no.
That's what it is. And then it pans down and you see his hand on her boob and you're like, fuck this dude. What is happening?
Well, and he has no excuse. Because he knows that she is on a different fucking planet right now.
Oh, yes.
He just watched her vomit. There's no, like, she seemed into it. Homegirl is not even on this plane of existence, bruh.
No. She's high on, quote, PCP.
Yeah.
I mean, what we thought this was like, oh, this nice guy sees this girl who's been drugged and is making sure she doesn't suffocate on her own vomit.
Right.
And then it flips so fast to like, oh no, he's not that good guy. He's actually a guy who's like a predator and saw this woman who had been drugged and is now going to try and take advantage of her.
Right.
Like Doug is stone cold, a bad dude.
Yeah.
Like a very bad guy.
And she, in that moment, is like, oh, no. Like, no, thank you.
course.
And he says, you can't stop once you've started. So, like, he was not going to take no for an answer.
And like grabs her hand and puts it on his crotch like that's where she wanted her hand to be. And that's when he's saying you can't like lead a guy on or whatever, which like you can stop at any point. Even if you have given consent, you can stop at any point. And she has yet to give consent.
Well, not only, she's given the opposite.
Exactly.
She's now said no twice.
Exactly.
Right? So she runs. She runs, leaves the party, runs out into the graveyard in the middle of the storm, which we will find out was a very severe storm the next day.
Yeah.
But she goes to that statue and she says, I wish I was with you. We will get more context as to what she meant in that moment. But like for now, she goes home, goes upstairs, breaks the mirror. He gets hit by lightning. She goes to bed. She trips out again into a silent film, basically a Pabst silent film. Although I love that like her very fancy dress is a Pabst Blue Ribbon dress.
Yes. Well, and she has a Pabst Blue Ribbon sheet.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when Doug was like talking to her as they were walking,
He had a can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this dream, she's with Statue Man as if he was like a statue come to life. She wakes up and Taffy's like, hey, Mama's freaking out about the bathroom. We've not met her stepmom yet. We're about to.
Yeah.
But she gets up, she goes downstairs, and her stepmom is like, initially in this scene, very frustrated, very mean, very accusatory, but it sounds like Lisa has had a pattern of behavior of acting out because she is in a state of emotional unrest. And she'll vocalize this later in the movie of like, I felt like everyone just wanted to be done grieving my mom and it hurt.
Yeah.
And what else was I supposed to do? I didn't want to leave my town. I didn't want to like do any of this.
I mean, even if her dad and stepmom didn't kill her mom so that they could be together because of an affair, and they did actually meet maybe like 3 months after the mom died and got married 6 months.
Right.
That is so fast. I understand why she would feel this way.
It's still shitty.
Yes.
100%. So it sounds like she's just kind of acting out. And I think probably she has been to a degree, and maybe even not consciously. But I feel like when you're young and you've got grief like that, it comes out in weird ways. And,
Paige, yeah, my brother died when I was 15 and I was terrible.
Yeah.
After that, like I did a bunch of terrible shit after that. And like, I'm not saying that anything she does in this movie was right. I'm certainly not saying anything I did in these types of moments were right.
No, of course not.
But in those moments, you feel justified in losing your mind because you're like, whatever. Like it's just such a trauma reacts very bad ways. And therapy helped a lot for me.
Right.
But like 6 months, that's a big change to go from my mom's alive and I love my life to my dad has married someone else and I'm in a new school and have a new stepmom.
And new stepsister.
Yes.
And I live in her exercise room because that's why the exercise bike is in there.
Yeah, it's such a quick, drastic change of circumstances that involves like one of the biggest tragedies anyone ever has to go through in life. Like, it's so fast. So I understood why she's saying all that,
Right. Now, her stepmom, in the midst of this, launches into, like, how dare you do this to me? I'm an intuitive person, and you are ruining my life, and the storm happened, and, like, I'm feeling all these things, and very much centers herself in it. Now, should Lisa apologize and replace the mirror? Of course. And she does agree to do that. And I think had they maybe given her a second to wake up and like come downstairs, she probably would have done that anyway. But she gets kind of put on trial.
She does.
But this is the first time we find out that her stepmom is a psych nurse. And she's super into the intuitive person, hyper empath, I'm going to say large group awareness trainings that are on tape.
Yeah, I don't think Taff fell far from the tree, I guess is my point.
No, but the reason I bring it up is, it's the perfect example of the most selfish person in your life is in therapy being told it's okay for them to be a little bit selfish. It's that.
Yeah.
But it's also a paid multi-level LifeSpring type thing that her mom is listening to on tapes.
Yeah.
It was very popular at the time. And is kind of bolstering, I would say, her stepmom's narcissism. I would say there are a lot of scary things about her mom.
I think the version of that for now is people saying, well, I'm just like an empathetic person.
And she says that in this movie still, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that sort of thing. That, I mean, honestly, some people it could be true, but most of the time when people volunteer that information that way, it's like a huge red flag. That's like when people say, describe yourself. And they say, well, I'm a Christian.
I'm an empath.
If the first thing you lead with is typically what you aren't in that situation.
Here's what I will also say. I do believe people can be more empathetic than others, 100%.
Of course.
I don't mind bringing this up because Crystal has done, comedy stuff about it specifically. Crystal Adams, I believe, truly is an empathetic person.
Yeah.
She's very sensitive to the needs of others and is very good about communicating it of like, hey, I'm really sad today because of this thing.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't want to call you back, but like, that's where I'm at. Meet me where I'm at.
Yeah.
Cool. Of course. Great. But I also think that there's a lot of people that say it to excuse bad behavior.
Yeah, that's typically how it's used.
And that's where it's bad. That's where it's not good.
That's why I brought up the whole, like, well, I'm a Christian thing. Like, if you ever hear that, it's from a used car dealer who's trying to fuck you over. Like, no one who is actually, like, living the values that Christ taught or whatever leads with that as, like, trust me, I'm a good guy. Like, I don't trust anybody who says things like that under those circumstances.
Right. I mean, for example, that's never the first thing I would go with.
Right?
No, I go with any number of other things, but it's also why I'm like, it's weird to put it on dating apps.
I know. And that always felt like a big red flag to me too. But not necessarily just like I'm a Christian. Like, I'm an empath is also the same red flag for me.
Same.
It's like the first thing you lead with, if you say it in that like sort of cadence of, well, I'm like whatever it is, I'm concerned about.
Now, here, let me present to you the alternative way to like do that and not have it be creepy.
Yeah.
Is like, let's say on your dating app, you're like, I like these kind of movies. I like this kind of food. I do this kind of thing. And also, I love going on hikes with my small group from church.
Yeah, right?
Great.
Yeah.
That's a whole bunch of things about you.
Different vibe.
But fully different vibe.
Yeah, completely different vibe.
That's not a red flag.
No, that just says I have a church community and it's part of my life.
I have a people that I do activities with. Great. That's actually a green flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the other huge red flag with her stepmom is that she is a psych nurse, but she does not hesitate to make derogatory comments about Lisa's mental health and to directly call her crazy.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
And Taff sort of calls her on it a bit.
Yes.
And that's how we learn that she actually works in a psych hospital.
Yes.
Because she calls Lisa crazy, and then Taff is like, Mom, you really shouldn't say that. Like, you work at the psych hospital.
It happens twice.
Yeah.
It happens in this scene where she's like, she says to Lisa, you belong in the loony bin.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly offensive.
Which is where she works. Like, that's so crazy.
Well, and Taffy says, Mom, I don't think you should be calling it the loony bin. And she's like, if it fits.
Oh, yeah.
Which is ridiculous. But this is also where we find out the cemetery was struck by lightning. Oh, well, she goes to Wayne's because it is a weekend. It's a Saturday.
Right.
Where she works as a tailor. And Michael comes in to repair a jacket. They talk a little bit about the night before, but it's just friendly. I would say there's no point in the movie where Michael is truly leading her on. I think Michael is being friendly and she wants more.
Yes. I don't think Michael is saying, no, I would never date you either. He is just nice.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that it's fine for her to have a crush on him.
Sure.
But I don't feel like he's led her on at all, you know?
No. And Tamara comes in because Tamara's with him that day. But she smells the jacket. She comes home. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, again, if we're taking the movie as seen on the screen and we are seeing at least some reality within Lisa's reality.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that makes me think her stepmom is emotionally and verbally abusive, which is she gets home and they're like, oh, there's one slice of pizza left. And she's like, you could pick the meat off. And it's literally it's a comical amount of meat.
It looks like it's just crust and like hamburger meat.
All sausage.
Yeah, there's nothing else on it. So if she like picked the meat off, quote unquote, it would just be like a piece of like toast.
Right.
But like the type of bread that pizza is.
Right.
It would be gross. There'd be nothing to it.
Right. And we find out that the mom bought that pizza because they get a free 2-liter of Orange Crush with a coupon. But essentially, this is the stepmom making sure that 3 members of the family are fed with no consideration for the 4th.
Right.
Knowing that she would be home at that time. And she's a teenager. And so, like, yeah, maybe there's food in the house, one would hope. But, like, as a teenager, you're kind of trusting the adults in your life to help feed you.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not great. And then they're going to a movie, but she does decide to skip it. They do invite her to the movie, of course.
Yes.
Because I think that there's no way they couldn't with everyone there. I do think if she had not gotten home in time, they would have just gone without her.
Probably. And she does turn them down and they're sort of fine with her not going. But yeah, they do offer. Yeah. And they're even like, hey, how can we Brady if we don't bunch?
Right.
Like, they're like, no, but please come with us. So I do think they want her to go with them. But
well, to clarify, Taff says that.
Yeah.
Because Taff wants her there. Taff is not the villain, right?
Yeah, Taff is a great sister. Like, Taff is great.
Taff wants her there. Anyway, she stays home and she's watching one of the later George Romero zombie movies. It is in Fun Facts. I don't remember at the moment, but we'll get to it later in Fun Facts. There's a knock on the door. She hears someone groaning outside. Glass breaks. He comes in through the window and chases her around. Now, I will say the first thing she goes for is to throw the Precious Moments and Snow Babies figurines.
She literally, like, upon the intruder running in, is like, quick, hand me the breakables so I can throw them at this intruder. Like, she runs to the breakable shelf and just tosses shit at him. It's very funny.
But she climbs all the way upstairs. She climbs down the outside of the house.
Yeah.
He chases her outside. He kind of green barfs on her. The sprinklers turn on. The neighbors see it and they're like, what? That girl is so odd. Like, no, Taffy's delightful, but this other girl. She goes to try and call 911, but the line is engaged because he's on her dad's shoe phone in the other room.
Yeah.
But so at this point, she goes to sit down with him and play some music. And she's just kind of like, okay, well, maybe I can help you. Like, if you're not trying to hurt me, maybe help me. And he like hands her back her mom's rosary, which she put on the grave.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, when I said I wanted to be with you, I meant that I wished I was dead. Like, because my life is going so badly that like she had just been assaulted at that point. Like, I wished I was dead. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Don't cry. It smells bad. Come upstairs, get in the shower. We're going to take care of this. Now, this scene of her being kind of triggered by an intruder maybe suggests that she was not the one who killed her mom. Maybe this is the intruder thing. But I also, if we're reading this as there is no creature, this is all in her head.
That's the way I read it. Yeah.
You can absolutely read some of the following scenes where they're like, you did this for attention, as maybe that is what happened. But at the same time being like, yeah, she's a grieving teenager. It's been 6 months since her mom died. Like, if this is the worst you're getting, be happy,
right?
I guess.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, she cleans him up. She gets him we get a fun costume change montage where she gets him into a fun outfit. Where she got those clothes, who's to say, but we're not going to dwell on it. But she cleans him up. She's combing his hair. She realizes he's missing an ear and a hand. And she's like, I can't do anything about that. I'm not a doctor, but don't worry. Girls like guys with scars. There's a guy on Days of Our Lives that wears an eye patch and it does not define him. Oh, what's his name?
Patch.
Patch. His name is Patch, which is a real thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, her mom, dad, and Taffy come home. She tells them the home invasion thing, but doesn't tell them about the creature. And her stepmom immediately goes to, you are deliberately ruining things in my house for attention because you feel neglected, which may be the case, but also the stepmom is not making that better with the way she's treating Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, the stepmom's not great. Yeah.
Yes, so if you read this as the creature is not real and he only exists for Lisa, then yeah, it's maybe that is happening.
Right.
However, this is also where she just calls her crazy. And Taffy's like, hey, can you not do that? That's not kind. And she's like, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. You're either crazy or inconsiderate. And either way, I'm sending you away.
Yeah.
And Taffy is like, you can't institutionalize her. She can barely survive PE. Because it definitely sounds like it's either, and when she suggests it later, it's a mental institution, like a juvenile detention facility.
Yeah. Like residential, like she lives there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's either literally an institution or like not a wilderness school, but the horrible ones that abused people. Like it's those.
The one that like Paris Hilton has funded like 3 documentaries to expose. Yes.
Yeah. And good for her. Those documentaries are fantastic.
They are.
Really good. And also fuck those people.
Yeah.
And the fact that some of them are still walking around like everything's fine. And some of them even like work in fucking senates and shit. They should all be exposed and stripped of everything they own. Anyway, her stepmom stomps upstairs to, go to bed. It's over for the night, but this is the battle, not the war, basically.
It's far from over, but yeah, it's over for the evening.
Right. We cut to the next day, and the monster, the creature, picks out her clothes. And honestly, this fit is fire. Yes, she looks like she dressed as a spirit Halloween for the rest of the movie, but also is maybe Winona Ryder's character from Beetlejuice. Either way, it's fire the whole time. It's like a black lace mini dress with like a blossom hat. And it's incredible. I love every second of it.
It's very similar to what you just saw Tamara wearing in the last time you saw Tamara.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, she goes to school. While she's at school, the stepmom is home cleaning the house, listening to her tapes about why it's okay for her to be selfish. And the creature is following her around the house, puts a worm in her food, and her diet plate is what she calls it. But we also see her answer the phone to a door-to-door salesman and just verbally torture him.
I love that. It was because he was selling carpet cleaner, and she, instead of saying, no thanks, I'm not interested, took it as a challenge that her carpet wasn't clean enough.
You could eat off my carpet.
Like, that is not at all what he said.
Yeah, she is a piece of work.
Because you could have easily just taken that as, of course he would think I would need more carpet cleaner because my carpet is clearly so clean, I must just be about to run out. But she took it as like, ma'am, your carpet is filthy. You got worms. Like, you need to clean it. And that's not at all what he meant. She's just insane.
Yes. Meanwhile, back at school, Michael Trent stops to talk to Lisa to get notes from class. But again, this is friendly. I would say this doesn't necessarily cross any line into flirting or anything.
No, he's just being nice.
Yeah, he's just being nice. Taffy gets between them. And Taffy is like, Lisa, I think you should be friends with the right people. I don't think he's the right person to be friends with. Now, either he and Taffy are already involved and she's trying to distance them.
Yeah.
Or they haven't become involved yet. It's unclear. The movie doesn't fully come down either way. But he basically says, is like, hey, to define people is to limit, which is Oscar Wilde. And she just says, yeah, well, Oscar the Grouch said scram. And I'm like, God damn it, Taffy. Like,
you wonderful idiot.
You beautiful idiot. And then turns to Lisa and is like, look, there are tons of like totally decent guys that could date you. You could maybe even get a cute guy with bad skin, which is like a brutal thing to say.
Yeah.
But she means it completely nicely.
She's like casually inconsiderate. Like, I think she means it as a compliment, but it's not.
She does 100%. Yeah. But we know that stepmom's supposed to be at a conference. She's going to go hang out at somebody's house or some party. So please tell my mom I'm at Lori's after practice or whatever. And she's like,
yeah, Taff does. Yeah. Taff is like, cover for me. I'm not going to be home. Tell him I'm at Lori's.
Right. And she's like, I don't think your mom's home and dad works late. She's like, that's fine. But like, he always wants to know where I am. And Lisa's like, really? Because her dad never seems to want to know where she is. Because her dad has essentially abandoned her for the new family and could not care less about what is going on with Lisa. Which I think is part of that pain that she's feeling, is that he was like, oh, perfect, new family? Oh, what a bummer that this other daughter has to be here.
Yeah.
But she's like, okay, fine, I'll cover for you. But we cut to, she goes home, she and the creature are talking, and who should burst in but the stepmom? She puts the creature in the closet, and the stepmom is yelling at her. And this is where we get the damn it, Janet.
Yeah.
Like, I love you. But she's like, I thought you were going to Milwaukee for the conference. She's like, I skipped it because I'm ill because you put a worm in my diet plate. And Lisa seems to not have any idea what she's talking about, because as far as what we saw on the screen, she wasn't there. She didn't do it. She didn't know. And so she's like, what is happening? And the stepmom is like, I am a nurse and an angel, and I am taking care of everyone the way that I always do. And you're just like, oh man, this is nuts. And this is where she's like, Lisa says, I didn't want to move here. I didn't want this. I didn't want to uproot my entire life. And she's like, yeah, well, people were talking about you and you're lucky I took you in. And very, very evil stepmother. And then she says, I'm sending you away. It's inpatient lockdown, special socks, everything, which to me says probably institutionalized.
I assume so as well. And that's why she said special socks and everything, to like drive home that point specifically. Yeah.
A little grippy sock vacation.
Yeah.
And who should come out of the closet behind her but the creature with Lisa's sewing machine. And he gets her over the head with it. And she goes down. She's unconscious, bleeding out on the floor. He cuts off her ear. And the whole time Lisa's like, why? No, oh my God, why? And then he hugs her and gives her the ear and she's like, okay, but not till we bury the body.
Yeah.
Not like, I'm horrified, let's call for help. And they are like in an embrace and she's just like, not till we bury the body. And this should be, if you've seen it before and you know she's the villain, this is where you're like, now it gets bad. Like, this is the turn of her being like, okay, like
Yeah.
it's not good. But they drag the mom to the cemetery. They dump her in an open grave. They don't bury her. They just dump her in an open grave and no one goes looking for her.
Paige, I'm pretty sure it's his grave.
It is his grave.
Yeah.
It's only 2 or 3 days that this movie takes place over.
Right.
And so no one really even has time to look for people because they dump multiple people in that grave.
Right, yeah. And when the cop comes and they just throw her in the grave, it instantly kills her, I guess, the police officer.
No, I don't think she dies.
Well, she doesn't yell or anything. She just like stays put and is like, I'll wait till they leave.
Yeah, we cut away only like a minute later, but I don't think she dies.
Yeah.
But she does ask him, is it peaceful down there? And he shakes his head no. And she just kind of shrugs and walks away.
Right.
But I think that's almost her being like, good, or whatever. But this is, now she's full villain berserker mode. Because she's like, she sews the ear on him. They put him in the tanning bed. And I do love that he wears the mom's earring for the rest of the movie, where he like keeps the pieces.
Well, and also the ear is a whole different color of skin than his like face and stuff is, because his face is like almost like a gray because he's dead. And the skin is like more flesh colored.
The more they easy bake oven him,
yes,
the more lifelike he becomes.
Yes.
Which I do kind of like as well. But the fact that they make the ear work, now it's almost like, okay, she becomes a product killer.
Yes.
Now she is killing people to get things because she gets up the next morning at breakfast. She's drinking a bottle of sherry and her dad is like, is that sherry? And she goes, no, it's Lisa.
And Taff is like, damn, that was a great joke, right?
She made a joke.
Yeah.
And she's wearing my half shirt from Contrampo, which is a reference to Contempo Casuals.
Oh, okay.
A Forever 21 before Forever 21 existed. Although I think Forever 21 was like coming to prominence at the time as well. But Contempo Casuals, that was a store at the time.
All right.
Anyway, but they go to school. And again, she's dressed kind of spooky, kind of goth, kind of whatever. And I do love that Taffy is like, damn, half the school's going to go to Boner Town and they don't even know it yet. And I'm like, God bless you, Taff.
I know. She's just like building her sister up, like being so nice.
Taffy for president. I love Taff.
Yeah.
Anyway, at this point, Taffy's like, it's kind of nice not having mom in town. It's nice that we could all bond. And Lisa's like, actually, I miss her because she was so great at building me up. And everyone's like, what? Really? Which part of me is like, see, they know she's being treated bad and aren't doing anything about it. But she says pointedly to her dad, I'm so glad you chose someone who's good for both of us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
And I agree, she's not.
Yeah.
But she did also just murder the person that she is like mocking, and that felt weird to me.
Hey, technically the creature did, but she is being very callous about the death. Whether you believe the creature is alive or not.
She's definitely an accomplice. Like, she definitely was in on it.
Yeah, at minimum, she is an accomplice.
Yeah.
But this is also where we see that Taffy has a hickey, which means that Taffy probably was with Michael the night before and got Lisa to cover for her.
I think so, too.
And she says it was a crimper accident, which, been there. Definitely burned a bunch of skin off my forehead trying to have crinkle bangs.
God.
It was not a good look. It hurt so bad. Just because you have to get it so close to your head and you just like, and you're like, ah, and then you got to cover it with the bangs.
It just sounds like you're putting yourself through a lot of like potential or actual hurt or harm to then just have crinkle bangs, which doesn't seem like a good thing.
You'll notice I don't have crinkle bangs now.
You don't have crinkle or bangs, Paige.
No bangs. Not opposed to bangs, just I don't always have time or energy to style them. But I would also say that like it's a classic case of not figuring your hair out until much later in life, you know?
I'm sure that's definitely not everyone's high school experience. There's a reason they call your high school years like your blunder years, because you're like, you're figuring out how to be you, and a lot of times you start with a lot of the failures that you don't end up keeping throughout your later years, you know?
I will also say that hair products, like real estate in California, constantly appreciate, where they like just get better as time goes on. And if you look back and you're like, God, why was my hair so shitty? Hair products at the time were shitty. Like, you know, your hair gets better the more we learn about hair.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like medicine, you know? People survive cancer now and they couldn't back in the day. Because we learned that we shouldn't put sulfates in shampoo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so They leave for school. Meanwhile, at school, she writes a love note, and we think she's giving it to Michael because it says, like, I love you. Do you want to meet me after school? Love, Lisa. Check yes, circle yes or no. She goes to class. He smiles at her in class, and then she gets a note at her locker, and yes is circled. And she goes to the park, and at first you think Michael's going to meet her, but no, it's Doug.
Right.
Because this is a fully premeditated murder.
Yeah.
This is murder one.
Yeah.
Like this is jail for life. This is no confusion about this one.
It's fine, Paige. She gets away with it all.
No, she dies. They would have caught her.
They would have caught her, but she does die. Like, she kills herself before they catch her. So technically, she gets away with it all.
In a painful way, but still, yeah.
In a way she chooses.
In a way she chooses. She got to choose. Yes, you're right.
Nobody gets justice in this movie.
No. Now, again, this is the guy who assaulted her. So, like, you don't feel as bad about it.
I mean, yeah, you're right. I feel way worse about Michael Trent than I do Doug. Yeah.
Yeah. But she walks him out into the graveyard where the creature is waiting and chops his hand off. And then he goes running away with his hand or clutching his hand. And the creature throws the axe and kills him.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think they would have gotten away with just taking his hand. Like, he's a witness at that point. So, like,
I mean, they definitely had to kill him. Like, he was always going to die when he went there. Like, they weren't just going to take his hand.
Yes. But she sews the hand onto the creature. He goes to the tanning bed. He's got 2 hands now, which means that he can play the piano for her. And we get a fun little REO Speedwagon interlude where it's a song that her dad used to play for her mom.
Yeah.
He plays it for her. It's very sweet. And he cries. And I think she thinks he's crying about what they did. But if the credits are to be believed, he's crying because he used to play piano for the woman he loved and then she left him.
Well, and also he's clearly falling for Lisa, who was in love with somebody else.
Yeah.
And she's friend-zoned him. So I get why he's sad. I also don't understand why his tears smell like shit.
Because he's dead?
I don't think that's what...
He's still dead.
I know, but do tears smell worse over time? Also, do your tear ducts have the total amount of tears you'll always have for your entire life? Or do they continuously make new tears? Because there's no way it can be the first page.
Yeah.
You can't be born with like 70 gallons of tears, right?
No.
So like you're creating new tears as you... I'm just saying it's dumb that his tears smell. It doesn't make sense.
No, that's why it does make sense to me, because it's not the normal water or whatever you would have for tears. It's whatever's inside his decaying body, like when vampires cry blood.
Right.
And so whatever's in his body probably smells gross.
It would be like that. It would be just like fresh tears, because if he had the ability to cry at all, they would be fresh, new tears that smell just like your tears do today.
But not if he's dead. I mean, I still think he's kind of dead.
He is dead.
So everything inside a dead person smells. Maybe they would smell like formaldehyde.
No.
That actually makes more sense to me.
They would just smell like tears.
But I don't think he can produce tears.
Okay, but then he's crying.
So whatever's leaking out of his eyes is just grossness from inside. Like, I think his saliva would also be gross. And sweat would be gross. Like, all of it. It's just whatever liquid is...
Okay. I do think that this is like a fundamental question we got to get to the bottom of, because do you produce saliva in tears if you're a zombie? And if you do, it would just be like everyone else's saliva in tears, because it would be new saliva. You're not born with the total amount of saliva. Therefore, it could not deteriorate and smell over time. You would just create new tears or new saliva.
I think you're producing it with whatever you have inside, right? Like, if you're producing it new, it's based on the stuff inside.
Yeah.
And we know that all the stuff inside of zombies is gross and smells gross.
Do we know that? Or is that just like something that Q told you? Like, there's nothing in this movie that would suggest...
I mean, zombies aren't real, but like...
I know, that's why I think we got to get to the bottom of it, because like it is interesting. So like...
I think if the mechanism by which you are creating tears, like the pieces in your body that are creating the tears because they're creating them new.
Tear ducts.
Your tear ducts and whatever processes are moving liquid through your body to make that happen. If those are all dead and decaying, I think even if it is just water, it's going to smell gross because it came through all of those channels.
Okay.
That's my explanation.
Yeah.
Which is why for vampires, it's blood because all their stuff is blood.
That actually makes more sense to me than this makes sense to me, but whatever. Like,
to me, they're the same, but
yeah,
you know.
I mean, one's blood and one's just tears that stink. Which he doesn't stink, but his tears stink. Like,
I think he does stink, and the movie doesn't call that out enough because I think he generally would smell.
Yeah,
because he's dead.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it was like, oh, this is dumb.
I do know that the more times they microwave him, the less his tears smell. So the more he kind of like regenerates, the less of a problem it is and the less bugs he has inside him.
Right.
So I think maybe that's part of it.
Oh, man.
He hasn't been microwaved enough.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool.
Anyway, she puts him back upstairs. Her dad and Taffy get home. Her dad's home. They're watching Bob Ross. Taffy gets home and she's like, I finally got my back tuck. I've got to call mom because she said she'd give me her diamond studs. She calls the hotel. Her mom never checked in.
Yeah.
And Lisa, her dad catches what she thinks are her bloody fingernails, but it's just the whiteout. And she's like, oh yeah, new trend. All the kids are doing it.
Well, I mean, she does have bloody fingernails, but she covered her fingernails with whiteout.
Yeah.
So like, it's just, you see the blood around her fingernail itself, not the blood on her fingernail. Does that make sense? Because when you see the close-up, you do see blood on her hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But she explains it away as like, it's a new trend that people are doing, putting white on their fingers.
Right.
Yeah.
She goes back upstairs to hang out with the monster because she is not entirely sure how this whole phone call thing is going to go. And this is where they find her back massager that her aunt bought her for Christmas a few years ago so that maybe she would have a personality. But who should bust in but Taffy? And Taffy's like, she didn't check into the hotel. I called all the other Radissons in Milwaukee. I called the conference. I called something. No one has seen her. There's got to be some explanation. Somebody drugged or kidnapped her because Taffy, for as dumb as she is for normal things, great true crime detective. She would be an online sleuth for sure. But Lisa is like, she hides a bloodstain on the floor and she's like, hey, no, I'm sure she'll be back tomorrow. It'll be fine. And Taffy is like, no, I'm an intuitive person because that's the things her mom told her.
Right.
She's like, I know when something's wrong. Something is not okay.
I'll say this about her calling herself an intuitive person in this moment. She's right.
She is.
Something is wrong.
Something is wrong. And I do love that she's like, okay, well, go tell dad. Cut to. She goes and tells her dad. And we cut back and forth between the creature giving Lisa a back massage and more.
Well, I was going to say.
To try and calm her down.
Yeah, because.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it in a second.
Okay.
While her dad and Taffy are on the phone. The conversation with her dad and Taffy reporting her mom missing to the police is my favorite part of this movie every single time. To me, it is some of the funniest writing in this movie.
Yeah.
Where her dad, he's like, hair color, and it's almost like he doesn't remember. It's like, Twitter's a cesspool.
Twitter doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, whatever. I refuse to call it X. He's nonsense. But like that or Reddit, you'll hear stories about like a mom gets sick and the dad has to take the kids to the doctor and doesn't know their full names.
Yeah.
Like all the time. And I'm like, that's insane to me. That's ridiculous. But this is that dad in the moment. He's like, Brown? It's like, you see her every day, man. Like,
that's your wife. Like, you should know at least what color her eyes are.
Yeah. And Taffy takes the phone and she's just like, it's like a Labrador at the park when the sun hits it just right.
Well, that's her mom.
And you can see brown and like shades of red. It's so beautiful. And he's like, okay, so brown. Cut to the back massager. Cut back.
You keep calling it a back massager. It's not a back massager.
I'll get to it.
Okay.
First of all, they are even still marketed as back massagers. And at the time they were, because you could not sell them in regular stores if you marketed them otherwise.
Of course not. I know. I'm just saying, let's be honest about what.
Yeah, it's a Hitachi magic wand.
Yes, let's be honest about what it is, guys.
Yeah.
We're all adults here, hopefully.
But I'm trying to save it for when she talks the creature into doing it to her, which is 2 scenes from now.
Oh, you mean when she talks her friend into giving her an orgasm and then does not reciprocate? Yeah.
Helping each other out.
Great.
But so on the phone, they're like, what's her eye color? It's hazel, but she wears green contacts. She has a square French manicure. Like, all like so much detail. Then we cut back and she's like, people don't always use it on their back. Friends helping each other out. She gets the creature to basically
complete her to completion.
Yes. She gets the creature to complete her to completion. Mutual masturbation. Well, not mutual.
It's not mutual. She does not return the favor. It is
a friend helping a friend out.
Yes. A friend who's been friend zoned, helping the friend that he's falling in love with out. Yes.
Yeah. We cut back to the phone. She wears a cross pendant and Elizabeth Taylor white diamonds. Yeah, she's a bitch. And I love that like rule of 3 of like information. And then she's like, yeah, she's a bitch. Yeah. And I'm like, of course she is. You just described the meanest ladies at my church growing up to a T. So to end it with like, yeah, she's a bitch. I'm like, yeah, they were.
I mean, they're boomers. Now, those are boomers. Like what you're describing is boomer.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
but a very specific kind and subset. Because it was not my parents. It
wasn't my parents either, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Just like a teensy bit above my parents' earlier boomers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we get a crackle of electricity suggesting that he's on the highest setting of the magic wand.
Oh, yeah. They turned that thing up to 11. That back massager page. Up to 11.
We cut back to Taffy and her dad. They've hung up the phone because they finished the police report. And she says, I called one of those psychic hotlines and the person on the other side was actually Jamaican. And they said that my mother and I share a heart. And that's how I know that something is wrong. And her dad is like, hey, she's probably at some bar somewhere and you know what she's playing on the jukebox.
Kokomo, which is their word for sex, which leads me to believe that he knows his wife cheats on him.
Right? Oh, okay, because I did not catch that until this time watching it.
Famously, I never miss anything in movies, Paige. I don't know how I noticed it the first time, but I did.
I think I was too busy laughing at her being a bitch to think about the jukebox here. But when you have the jukebox here and then he calls and is like, let's Kokomo, and you're like, oh, they have an open relationship.
They must.
They must, something. Anyway. But we cut upstairs where the creature and Lisa are having this conversation where and I almost wish we had this conversation a little earlier because it would make us feel slightly better, but not since they've already killed 2 people.
Right.
But she's like, everyone seems in such a hurry to forget about my mom. And time heals all wounds, but that's a lie because time is the wound. It's further from the place that you had them.
Yeah.
And this scene to me suggests she didn't kill her mom. This, for me, is the evidence that maybe not.
Yeah. Having gone through not losing my mom, but losing my brother around the same time she did, I feel like this is a pretty apt description as to someone who lost somebody, not someone who killed somebody.
Right.
Because fully agree with what she says in this scene from a grief standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, I've described it to my therapist as like, the closer it happens, like, it's sort of like you're in the middle of a lake, right? And you drop a big rock when someone in your life dies.
Right.
And the ripples initially when you drop the rock are huge, right? The grief is just so, like the swings in your mood are so drastic because it's so fresh. And those ripples over time do get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
So as the further you get away from that tragedy, the easier it is to process through your grief about it, but you still always have grief about it. Like you just do.
Right. The rock always stays in the lake.
Yes.
It never leaves.
Yes.
And I think for her, she's still in those high ripples.
Oh, yes.
You know?
Yes. I mean, she lost her mom, I think it's 2 years ago in the movie.
No, 6 months.
Oh, I thought it was 2 years, but they got together 6 months ago. Well, either way, it's still fresh. I mean, 6 months to 2 years, that is there's 18 months difference there. But as far as like processing through the grief of losing someone that close, you'd still be in the throes of it 2 years later.
Oh, yeah. Here's the only reason because they say 6 months and they don't have a concrete time for the rest of it. But the only reason I'm going to say 6 months is because she's starting school as a new student.
She is.
Which means it's within the calendar year. Yeah. Anyway, but she does say, she's like, I'm not really afraid to die because anything could kill you. And like, it is what it is. And I feel like some people come away from that tragedy either way. They either get way more afraid of death or they get way more desensitized to it. But she does say, she's like, I just don't want to die a virgin. And this is where she gets her idea. Because she asks the creature, she's like, did you ever? And he's like, just once. And like, did you love her? Yes. I want that. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love Michael because she's a high schooler and doesn't understand what love really is.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go basically offer myself to him tomorrow because we already killed 2 people. They're going to find out. They're going to send me to the electric chair. And so I might as well go do this tomorrow before they find and execute me.
Yeah.
She's like, it's a tanning bed for criminals. You'll get it. It's fine.
Yeah.
But he is immediately like, I don't like this idea, but he also can't really speak.
Well, he doesn't like this idea because it's the woman girl, really. She's in high school. She's a sophomore.
Right.
It's the girl he's in love with saying, I want to go bang it out with somebody else.
Another dude.
Which, like,
yeah.
I get because he doesn't have a dick, like we come to find out.
She doesn't know that yet, but yeah.
I mean, I wondered if that was just because, like, it decomposed off. Like, he did have sex before, so yeah.
Usually, genitals are, like, the first thing to go. Like, yeah. There are some extremities that, especially if you get left out in the wild, they're usually the first things to go.
Oh, they're eaten by animals.
Yeah. Soft tissue would decompose really fast.
Yeah.
Anyway, she gets up the next day. Epic fit. I mean, she literally looks like a bride of Frankenstein. Like, it's great. So good. She drives them to school. Taffy is not having a good time because Taffy is still very worried about her mom. But I do love that Taffy looks at her and goes, your boobs look great, by the way.
Yeah.
So they go to school only to find out that the cops are looking for Doug because here's the thing. For an adult to not come home, yeah, that's weird, but they're an adult. They have a car and money and...
Well, and they were also supposed to be at a conference. Like,
yeah.
I get that it's weird that, like, she wouldn't have checked into that hotel that she said she was going to check into, but maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And she just has not yet called you.
Right.
So, like, this is a time before cell phones, you know? Well,
right.
Maybe before wide cell phone adoption is the correct way to say it.
Right.
So, like, it's not feasible that it actually sort of could make sense that, like, she just hasn't made it to a phone to call yet. But even though that seems so foreign today.
Right. But on the flip side, a teenager not coming home.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
Different story. Yeah. Different story. And so Doug, who's a junior, who, again, they're like, he's a yearbook not pictured. I don't know him. He has been murdered. And they have found his body. Or at least he didn't come home last night. They haven't found his body yet.
Yeah, they're just trying to look into his disappearance at this point.
Right. And Lisa is like, oh, weird, didn't know him. And Taffy's like, I'm going to go home. Lisa, can you get a ride? She's like, I'll walk. Don't worry about it. And then Lisa just like floats down the hallway because she's gone full cuckoo bananas at this point. She's in her villain era. Nothing is stopping her.
Right.
But she notices in class that Michael Trent also cut class. And she gets called to the principal's office and they're like, dress code violation. Like the other kids in class are like, ooh, dress code violation. And she like is chewing gum, pulls it out and he goes, slut penalty. And she just sticks the gum on the paper and like touches his face as she leaves. And I was like, perfect. Because she's basically at this point, give no fucks.
Right.
Like she is out of fucks.
But also, it's not a dress code violation, guys. Like she's more covered up in this outfit than she is in pretty much any other outfit she's worn the entire movie.
The only thing I would think is because it's see-through around her chest, maybe.
But it's even the neckline of the dress that it's not see-through is pretty high. Like it's pretty conservative.
Yeah.
Like you could definitely see Nancy Reagan wearing this at the time and be like, oh, I wonder if they're mourning some dignitary, because it is a black dress. But like, it's not sexy. It's like Bride of Frankenstein elegant.
I would say it's the type of sexy that is not revealing, but still sexy, which is a great like needle to thread.
Yeah, I don't think it's like not a sexy black dress. I do think that she looks great in it. I just think it's also like appropriate.
No, he's just being a dick.
Yeah, and I think she treats him accordingly. Like, I don't think that what she does in this moment is terrible, honestly. And
no, I wish she'd done more of it.
Yeah, I wish that's the kind of shit she was doing most of the movie and not full-ass murders.
Yeah, well, and here's the difference. Here's the key difference here between Jennifer's body and this. Because in Jennifer's body, you have someone who is, I would say, in a pseudo-romantic relationship with the monster, realizes they are killing people, and then tries to stop them, even though it hurts them to hurt the person they love. And I think that's what's missing from this movie, because if the monster was always killing people, and then she had to stop the monster, whole different movie.
Right.
That's a movie I think everyone would get behind, and I think that's part of the problem.
I really do too. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons people are so split on whether they like the movie or not. And I think that is at the core of why.
Right. And I think knowing that going in makes it more palatable. That's why multiple watches is better. But if I was rewriting this, I would rewrite it to that.
Yeah, I was going to say this when we got to final thoughts. I feel like this is Diablo Cody's first draft of this script, and I want to see the 7th.
I think that's a fair critique.
There's so many story points and there are so many story beats in this that I like.
Yes.
But I feel like if you give her a redemption arc instead of she's full on villain, I think if she catches herself before she goes full dark into the abyss,
right,
and we find out that the monster is real and then she's just trying to kill the monster, which does make it very similar to Jennifer's Body. I agree.
Sure, but people love Jennifer's Body.
Yeah, I like that premise better because you have a redemption arc for your main character that we've been following the whole time. In this movie, she just kills herself because she's about to go to jail forever.
I even think that you could keep this movie almost exactly the same through the second killing. And at that point, it has to turn.
Yeah.
And if it turned at that point, even gradually, I think it saves it. I think you could keep literally everything to that point.
Yeah, because the stepmom could be in on the murder of her mom, and it's at least terrible to her.
Yes.
And the other dude, she legit sexually assaulted her.
Right.
So I am way more fine with those 2 kills. You're right.
And also, those 2 people, technically, the creature kills everyone.
Yes, exactly.
At no point does Lisa ever, axe in hand, kill somebody.
Well, I mean, true, but she is helping in every kill.
She's an accomplice, yes. I feel like the first one is an accident. She had nothing to do with it. She was present, but she didn't facilitate it.
Accessory after the fact.
Yeah. The second one, she facilitates it, but definitely could have been like, I thought we were just going to scare him.
Or I thought we were just going to cut his hand off.
Whatever.
Right.
And it gets out of control. And then things change.
Right.
But that's not the movie we're dealing with. So we'll get through. We're almost done. We're literally 20 minutes to the end of the movie because the pacing on this is wild.
Yeah. We're honestly to what I think is like the kill I hated the most, which is of Michael Trent. We're almost there.
There's one before that, actually. We'll get to it.
Right.
Which, that one before it, not deserved, but,
We'll explain it. Yeah.
We'll explain it. So, she gets called into the office. It's not for dress code. Because Tamara saw her leave the note for Doug.
Right.
And so Tamara is like, I'm pretty sure she knew something about it. And also people say that she killed her own mom because of the story that Taffy told at the party.
Right.
It has now made its way. And Lisa is like, I'm not going to answer any more questions. You can talk to my lawyer. And they're like, well, yeah, you weren't under arrest or anything, so I guess you could go. Like,
I guess technically you can just leave. Yeah.
I mean, no one is stopping you. It's 89. There's no metal detectors yet. And so she leaves and she's just like, fucking nosy bitch. And she goes to try and walk home. And at that point, what has been happening in that time is that meanwhile, the creature was at home. He overhears a voicemail from the dad who's like, hey, hun, are you home? Someone said they saw your car over on Glenview Terrace. And if you're home, maybe we can get some Kokomo in before the girls get home. Call me back. But at this point, the creature is like, we got to move that car.
Yeah.
We got to ditch that car. And so he goes to get the car. It's parked in front of another guy's house who is berating a child, possibly his own grandchild. Who's to say?
Sure.
And he kind of comes after the creature, and the creature uses the club in the car to beat that man to death and leave him in the street. And the kid that was being verbally tortured is just waving at the car as he drives away.
Like, thanks.
Thank you. Meanwhile, the creature is learning to drive in real time, which I think is wild. And I would have actually loved some visualizing of him failing to do that would have been very, very funny to me.
He does learn to be pretty competent pretty quickly, though.
Almost immediately. And he finds Lisa walking home and she's like, you got to take me to Michael's. Because whenever he cuts, he either goes to this one place and he wasn't there or he goes home. So please take me to his house. And the creature starts to, but then is like, no. And he still can't speak. And she's like, you don't think I should do this. Don't worry. People do this all the time these days. I know they didn't do it back in your day. And I also have a giant contraceptive sponge that will hit the floor later. And it is giant. She's like, please just take me to Michael's. Like, I have been your accomplice. We killed both people. Just take me there, right?
Yeah.
So he takes her. And while he's parked outside, he notices Taffy's car is across the street. Meanwhile, she breaks and enters this home. She just walks into that house.
Yeah, it seemed to be unlocked, but she does certainly enter. There's no breaking involved, but it's still illegal.
Yeah. She walks in and finds him and Taffy in bed, drops the sponge, and thus begins a really interesting conversation of Taffy being like, guys usually only want me because I'm pretty, but I feel like he and I can actually talk about things.
Yeah.
And then she expresses that frustration of like, I thought we were into the same cool things. I thought this was something else. It was not. And then who should come in but the creature, who immediately chops that dick off to On the Wings of Love as its shadow flies through the room. Now, what I thought was really interesting that I noticed for the first time
is that they included the balls in the shadow on the wall.
No, I loved that.
I thought it was hilarious. So funny. That is not the way a disembodied dick would look thrown through the air, but you still know exactly what they're doing. And like, I think it's funnier than if it looked more like medically accurate. Like, I think it's perfect. Don't change it. But it's just so wildly, like, it looks like a ball peen hammer sort of being tossed through the air.
It's so funny. Well, and the needle drop of the like, on the wings of love.
That is my dick and balls as they fly through the sky. So funny.
Hysterical. But what I think is really interesting is that the creature then goes for Taffy because he is going to attack Taffy because Taffy hurt Lisa emotionally in this moment. And Lisa stops him. And I think the movie sees this as Lisa's turning point, and we needed it earlier.
Yeah.
And that's our crux of the problem. We said it a bunch of different ways, but like this is one of those scenes where like on a rewatch, I'm like, the movie thinks this is the place.
Right. This is too little too late for me. And they also do not maybe kill, but like assault that police officer who comes to the graveyard later. Like they do more crimes together as a crime duo, as a like Zombie and Clyde, if you will.
Oh, Zombie and Clyde would have been a great name for this movie.
You're welcome. Diablo, call me. I'm a huge fan. Seriously, I am. I didn't love this movie, but I think she's amazing. She does amazing writing. Anyway, but like, I think we needed earlier for her to be like, we can't do this. We cannot kill people this way.
Right.
And then it's them trying to, like her trying to kill the creature. And it's just not at all that.
Right.
Even after this, like there is that moment where she like raises the axe behind his back. And then he turns around and she's like, I love you though. It's fine.
I can't.
Now that you have Michael Trent's dick, I think I'm into it.
I mean, she doesn't know that yet when she lowers the hatchet. We'll get to it in a second. But anyway.
It is in his, you could see it in his pocket. Like you could see the bulge in his actual pocket though. Like it's there. Yeah.
Right. So he leaves. The creature runs away. Michael Trent has bled out. He will be dead shortly if he is not dead already.
Yeah.
Taffy is covered in his blood and screaming. And Lisa basically gets Taffy into her car, drives the car to where the creature has parked the car. We know it's near the cemetery. And then she has this conversation with Taffy where she's like, hey, I wanted to thank you for being so nice to me when no one else was. I know it maybe didn't seem like I noticed, but I did. And your mom was just so heinous. And usually people like you bully me, but you didn't. You went out of your way to be cool and you wanted me to be your sister. And so she gives her mom's rosary and she just says, you're a great person and I'm sorry I hurt you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
Which this is a great scene. It would be even greater if it was in the process of her trying to stop the creature, not about to join the creature.
Yeah, it would be even greater if in this moment you weren't like, oh my God, she's a sociopath. I am actually legitimately terrified now for Taft just even being around Lisa.
Right.
Like, I think in this moment, she's going to kill Taft.
Yeah.
But I think if you make the turn earlier and make it so she's trying to kill the creature, it feels more like you're my sister and I love you. I will protect you.
Right.
And that is not at all how I feel leaving the scene. I'm like, oh my God, Taft's going to die.
I mean, on multiple viewings, it feels more that way because you know she's the villain, but this is the exception she makes.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it's contrasted to the bubblegum dream of the rest of the movie. This is a very realistic trauma scene. And so, like, on multiple viewings, I like this more and more, but I still agree. You need the turn faster and it needs to be a little different. But
yeah.
She runs to the graveyard. It is a police crime scene now.
Yeah.
She runs into the creature, and this is where she's like, hey, they're coming for me. Like, there's no way Taffy doesn't rat me out. this is my last 12 hours, basically. Like, I love you, you love me, let's do it. And he's like, but like, my penis rotted off. And he's like, but on the wings of love.
I stole that Michael's dong and you can sew it on my junk. Yeah, like we cut to that.
Sew it on my junk.
I actually sort of love when they cut to that scene and he is like holding his like shirt to the side as she is like on her knees in front of him, like sewing it on. And the angle looks very like blowjobic. It's very funny.
I love his facial expressions.
Yes.
Anyway, they trade peachy rings as engagement rings.
Yes.
They microwave him in the tanning bed.
They're wedding rings, actually, at this point. At the end, when it says beloved wife and the rings are there, like they're married.
Yeah, they're married. And they have a wild animated fever dream sex scene, silent movie craziness. Love it. But then they go back to the tanning bed and she's like, there's no other way. I don't know why I was afraid of you, but please turn it to max bronze.
Yeah.
And she cooks alive in the tanning bed. But
literally, it catches on fire. I kind of think they both burn up because he stays in there too, right?
So no. So this is what happens. So like, because he sets the lawn chair, he watches to make sure she dies.
Right.
He opens the note that she gave him.
Right.
And it says, death is temporary. I'll love you forever, Lisa. And he then leaves and comes back and digs her up. So he's then going to do the same thing she did for him. And I assume kill people and somehow purchase or acquire a tanning bed to then bring her back so that they can be together.
Well, it's the green lightning that brings you back, and they have no control over the green lightning, right? But I mean, they are together at the end, and she is back alive. So, like, they do figure it out. We don't see how that happens, though.
Yeah. I assume some sort of tanning bed. And we do see that her grave has a ton of flowers, and they're like, who left all the flowers? And it's probably him.
I assumed it was the creature, right? Like it's her boyfriend.
I think so.
Or her husband, I should say.
Yeah, but the dad and Taffy are like, I don't know, some sicko. There's a lot of people fascinated with our family.
Oh, and they would be. Like, there would be a whole podcast, like, dedicated to it now.
I'd host it.
Of, like, this crazy late 80s, early 90s murder mystery that happened.
Can't wait for Marcus Parks to get a hold of it.
Oh, it's going to be great.
But she's like, we'll go visit your mom. And then Fuddruckers. And I was like, damn, I want to go to Fuddruckers. And they just don't really exist anymore.
They still are around, but they're hard to find.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to make up a number, but it feels like there are 8 nationally when there used to be 1,000 nationally.
I think you're probably right. Anyway. We cut to the monster now fully microwaved, reading poetry in the park because now he can speak. This is his only line in the movie. And she is all bandaged. And in my mind, I'm just like, the killing spree continues.
Yeah.
And that's the movie.
So having seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what did you think about Lisa Frankenstein?
I still like it. It does take multiple views. It's not as good as Jennifer's Body. But I feel like if you like Jennifer's Body and you understand that she is the villain going into this, you can probably also enjoy it.
You could probably also enjoy it. That like
it's not for everybody. It's for me, but that's fine.
I'll give you my opinion on it, but let me tell you why my opinion doesn't matter first. This movie is not for me. It doesn't speak to my general high school experience. And if it does, I get why you'd like this movie so much. It's just not for me. And so I don't love it. I probably will revisit it just because I do really like and respect what Diablo Cody does with her movies, especially from a dialogue standpoint. I think she is one of those special kind of writers that can just do it really well. So I would like to see if maybe in 6 months, a year, if I watch this again, if I liked it more. But I didn't love it watching it this time. I'll just say it that way. But if you like it, I get it. I understand why you would like it. It's like Sex and the City for me. Like I get it's good. It's not for me, though. And that's okay.
Similarly, Sex and the City, not for me.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of women that don't like this, too. Like, and there are probably guys who like it.
Fair.
So, like, I think it's, like, all over the spectrum, but it's just not for me.
My husband really liked this when we watched it together. We had a good time. But yeah, I understand if you don't like it. And I mean, throughout this movie, we talked about reasons why it might not sit right with people. I do think there are a lot of funny jokes in this movie. I don't love some story points, but overall, I find the movie incredibly enjoyable. And I do think that Cole Sprouse's performance is incredible.
And he does a good job of it.
Yeah.
But Paige, do you want to hit us with some fun facts?
I'll hit you with some fun facts.
Zombie fun facts.
So this is the directorial debut of Zelda Williams, daughter of Robin Williams. As much as you not liking this movie, I do think...
Yeah, I think the direction's not bad. Like, the acting's good in it.
Yeah.
I don't dislike this for directorial reasons.
Exactly. Yes. No, and I think Zelda will get more cracks at stuff.
I hope so. And that's why I initially was like, ugh, because I'd love to see more from this director, even though I don't necessarily love this movie.
Yeah. So the Damn It Janet line is a direct reference to Rocky Horror. In the scene where Lisa refers to her Aunt Shelley, who bought her the vibrator so she'd have a personality, that is a nod to Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein.
Of course. And then having a zombie bring you to completion is also a very Mary Shelley vibe. So, like, you know, it all fits.
There are 2 police officers depicted in the film, Officer John and Officer Waters, which are, of course, a nod to the king of camp, John Waters.
Yes.
Now, in the opening credits, where she's making a grave rubbing of the name Frankenstein by using multiple different graves to do multiple different letters, this is actually a reference to Mary Shelley learning to write and read her own name this way by tracing the etching on her mother's gravestone. So that's something I did not know about Mary Shelley before this.
That explains so much about her just general vibe, though, right? Like,
yes.
Okay.
But personally, I dig Mary Shelley, though. I dig some Frankenstein. It's a very fascinating book. Please read it. The movies don't do it justice.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with Mary Shelley's vibe either. I just like hearing that sort of makes me get it.
Yeah. Now, to prepare for his role as the creature, Cole Sprouse trained with a movement coach and mime coach for several months in Los Angeles.
That makes sense.
Fucking worth it, right?
Yeah, because it's a very physical and great performance.
And normally when people are like, I did miming, I'm like, ugh, brother. But this, I'm like, yeah, like that worked.
Yeah.
Because the character doesn't speak until the very, very end of the film. They worked to create mime techniques and visuals to express his thoughts, emotions, and personality entirely non-verbally. And I do think they're very successful in doing that.
Yeah.
According to Diablo Cody, the movie is set in the same universe as Jennifer's Body, which I actually do find fascinating because this would be about 20 or so years before Jennifer's Body, canonically within the story universe.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I almost feel like it's an interesting world where we are exploring the bounds of emotions for teenage girls as monsters within that universe.
Yeah.
And I think the only downside is this does not truly make her a monster or truly make her innocent. It kind of tries to have it both ways, and that's where it fails. Because either she needs to be the villain like Jennifer is, or she needs to be the hero like Needy is. And not quite. But the idea that this lives where Devil's Kettle exists and where Satan can make indie bands popular, I do kind of love that. And if Diablo Cody just wants to make movies in that universe for the rest of her life, I'll be there to see them. So you sold one ticket.
She'll sell way more than one ticket. Like, I think she does that high school girl or that feminine perspective so well. I mean, she did that with Juno, Jennifer's Body, and this.
Yeah.
I think if she does a fourth movie, it probably will be from that perspective, and it'll probably be worth watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Taffy's wardrobe is inspired by Cindy Crawford and Phoebe Cates' style from the late 80s, early 90s.
Love it.
And they do it perfectly. It is incredible. Lisa's doll is actually named after actress Catherine Newton's dog, Starlight Rosebud, Hella Good Boy, Gonna Need a Big Bank, or Niblets Corn is the shortened version, which I think was just something they discovered on set.
I mean, that's nuts if that's her dog's real name in real life. That's too many names for a dog.
I think she just calls her Niblets Corn for short, which that's a great name for a pet.
Niblets Corn is also too long of a name. Like, your dog can only understand so many syllables, right? Like,
and doesn't know what corn is. I don't know. I bet she just calls it Niblets for short. Anyway, in the first scene after the beginning credits, we do see some of the headstones, not the one that she's doing the rubbing on. She rubs on a lot with that headstone because it's Cole Sprouse. But some of the other headstones that they zoom in on, One reads Francis Owens, which is the name of one of the characters from Practical Magic in 1998.
Well, nice.
Yeah. As an Easter egg, there's a Robin Williams album on the floor when the main characters first interact. It's Throbbing Python of Love.
Yeah.
There is a school supply company called Lisa Frank. You were probably familiar. According to Diablo Cody, the name similarity is a coincidence. Lisa's name comes from Weird Science from 1985, which also contains references to Frankenstein. If you're unfamiliar with Weird Science, it is when two nerds create the perfect lady with a computer.
Yeah.
And part of the reason she's referencing it is because it features protagonists who bring a love interest to life.
Yeah, I mean, I fully believe she knew who Lisa Frank was, but like that was not the reason she called it Lisa Frankenstein, you know? But when someone was like, have you heard of Lisa Frank? She was like, oh, yeah, I guess, yeah, that makes sense too. But no, it's because of this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I completely get that Diablo Cody's reason would be more nerdy and film related than Trapper Keeper related.
I also don't see any relation to Lisa Frank in the movie other than the colors.
But that's just 80s.
And that's just 80s. Yeah. And I think people are just like, oh, bright colors, Lisa Frank. And I was like, no. I invite you to view pictures of the 80s.
Right?
Lots of neon, lots of colors.
Which is like essentially like, not to name someone that you and I both love, like really love, but Andrea Gazzetta to me is like a very Lisa Frank, but like updated for now. And I kind of love her version of the colorful, I guess is what I'm going for. I love her choice of that kind of stuff.
Her tagline is something along the lines of, I could go to her website and just read it, but no, from memory. What if Lisa Frank thought about death a lot?
Yes. Yeah. It's like if Lisa Frank was also a goth.
Yeah.
It's like the vibe. Anyway,
it's great.
Check out Andrea Gazzetta's art. It's amazing.
Yeah, especially she's got a couple different shows going on right now if you're into originals, and a lot of them reflect animals that are endangered and kind of the habitats that they live in within a cool skull terrarium.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's very dope. She's great.
Anyway, in the United States, where this film is set, we don't have a tradition of burying unmarried or bachelors in separate sections of a graveyard or cemetery. However, this is a tradition in parts of Europe.
Really?
Yeah, there is a famous Bachelor's Grove Cemetery outside of Chicago that was founded in 1844. However, it contains multiple married and unmarried people of multiple genders, and the name is derived from a German family name, Batchelder. But in certain parts of Europe, there is a tradition of marrying unmarried people separately.
And that's where Mary Shelley would hang out. She'd be like, where are the dead singles?
Where the bachelors at? But and also if you did not have like a family plot or a family mausoleum. There are a handful of references to Voyage to the Moon, which is often referred to as the first movie. It's a film written and directed and produced by George, I believe Millet is how you pronounce this, and I might be wrong, from 1902. It's Le Voyage dans la Lune, and it is French originally. So it's not Pabst, but it is from a similar era of Pabst.
But it is the film, you've probably seen it, where some guy gets in what essentially is like a big bullet and shoots himself to the moon, and it hits the moon in the eye. And that's the moon with the bullet in it that is on her like door to her closet, right? That the creature lives in, sort of. So like that's the reference right there.
Right. The first movie Cole Sprouse ever did was Big Daddy in 1999.
Adam Sandler,
where he and his brother shared the role of a boy who chose to name himself Frankenstein.
I love that we have back-to-back done different Sprouse vehicles.
We're fully Sprouse.
We are fully Sproused up on this podcast, at least the last 2 weeks.
And I appreciate both Sprouses. Now, this movie refers to the corpse as the creature, which is what the monster was called in Mary Shelley's original Frankenstein novel. A lot of people call that creature Frankenstein's monster, or Frankenstein for short, but neither of those are applied to him in the novel. In the novel, he is the creature, and of course, Frankenstein is the name of the doctor, not the monster. The bookshelf in Lisa's bedroom has a copy of Lost Souls, written by Poppy Z. Bright, which is a Southern Gothic horror, but it was actually not published until 1992.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. And finally, well, last two. I'll end on the one that I think you're going to enjoy the most. So,
Okay.
as I mentioned, Cole Sprouse was in Riverdale, and since 2013, they've released a number of Archie horror comics where Jughead and other characters become zombies, vampires, werewolves, etc. So this is not the first time he has played a character that has also been a zombie. And finally, Andrew Levitt, better known as drag queen Nina West, released a song titled Lisa Frankenstein in 2019. It has been confirmed that they are unrelated, but it just happened to coincide with the same timing as this film. And those are your fun facts.
Well, thank you for those fun facts, Paige. Let's talk a little bit about box office. So what do you think the production budget was for Lisa Frankenstein? And it just came out this year. So like, you know.
Yeah, I think this was probably about 30 mil.
Oh, Paige, it's way cheaper than that. It was $13 million.
Oh, good for them.
I think it does look great for 13. They did a good job with that budget. Now, this movie did come out on February 9th of this year. And it was number 2 the weekend it came out. It was beat by the number 1 movie, Argylle, which also famously didn't do well. Number 2 was Lisa Frankenstein. Number 3 was The Beekeeper. Number 4 was Wonka. And number 5 was Migration. What do you think Lisa Frankenstein brought in its opening weekend?
Oh, probably not a lot. And I also have not seen Argylle, despite it having Henry Cavill with the worst haircut ever.
That it does surprise me that you haven't seen it, but only because of Henry Cavill.
Right. Oh, God. Opening weekend, I think this probably made $6 million.
Okay, Paige. It actually made $3.6 million.
Oh, brutal.
Argylle was in its second week and famously lost $100 million. Like the budget for Argylle was $200 million. It made under $100 million worldwide. And it was still number 1 this week that Lisa Frankenstein premiered because there weren't many good movies that were coming out at that time. Like there are other good movies that were in theaters. Like Wonka was in theaters. Anyone But You was in theaters. Dune was in theaters. But like they had been out for a while, you know. Lisa Frankenstein was number 2 in its opening week. It did not do well in its second week.
Yeah, sure.
It went from number 2 to number 9 in the box office, which is a significant drop week over week. Anyway, Paige, what do you think it brought in its 4-week run in the box office? And I'll just go ahead and include the $120,000 it made internationally. And we'll just say, what did it make worldwide?
Oh, man. I don't even think it makes its budget back. I think it tops out at 10.
Ooh, Paige, you're so close. It was $9.8 million.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it didn't even make its budget back. Yeah, it did not do well in the theaters. But that is your box office.
Just for curiosity, Jennifer's Body, because I know it also did bad. Did it do this bad?
No. Jennifer's Body had a production budget of $16 million and brought in $31.9 worldwide. So it made money in theaters.
Okay.
So yeah, this is the first Diablo Cody movie that I know of that lost money in theaters.
Bummer. It is a bummer because like I understand people not liking it, but it's not bad enough to bomb that bad. But I also think that was a weird time because like Argylle also didn't do great. Argylle also bombed.
It lost $100 million. Yeah, it lost a ton of money. Yeah. Anyway, but that's your box office. Paige, do you want to hit us with that romance and maybe honestly scary scale? We can do both.
Sure, let's do both. Our romance scale is a scale of 1 to 4 because Mikey said so. Todd.
Oh, it's a 1 on both, honestly. It's not scary and it's not romantic at all. Like the person she ends up with at the end of the movie, she friend zones until the last like 16 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I personally prefer Jennifer's Body, where I would argue that Needy finds love within herself.
Yeah, I could see that for Jennifer's Body. I think in this, she doesn't necessarily. I'm not sure she's capable of feeling love. I don't know, like Lisa's a very complicated protagonist, I think.
Lisa needs some professional help, regardless of what you think is happening in the movie, whether it is all a fever dream of her own making or if it's actually occurring. Either way, professional help.
Yeah.
And that's your scary scale and your romance scale.
Well, so this week, Paige, you made us watch Lisa Frankenstein, and honestly, it's the right day for it. It's Halloween. Like, this is the right movie to do for this podcast at this time. But what are you going to make us watch next week as we enter November?
It's the fall. I feel like we got to watch fall stuff.
Well, we already watched The Fall Guy.
That's true.
Just Ryan Gosling in Vermont watching the leaves change. It's a very different movie, but I'd watch that too.
Hey, November's my birthday month. So
It is.
on here and on Horror Virgin, I'm just picking shit that I want to watch. And we have not done a movie that I greatly enjoy, which is True Romance. Now, again, problematic relationship, lots of murder, but big old fun time, questionable Gary Oldman performance. And I'm just excited to watch it together because it is a crazy movie.
Is it more or less questionable than his performance in Tiptoes?
Oh, less questionable than
Okay.
Tiptoes.
Awesome. I haven't seen it, so I am interested to see it. I know vaguely about the premise because it's been out forever and people talk about it, but I can't wait to watch it for the first time.
Yep.
But that's your homework.
Hey, Todd, do we have any reviews?
We do, yeah. So let me read a Spotify comment that came in on our most recent Beautiful Wedding episode. And this is from Just Doing Whatever. And they say, I hope the wedding went great. I love this podcast. Wish you two the best.
Thank you.
And so thank you so much for that. So if you want to have me read your 5-star review and or Spotify comment, leave us a 5-star review and or Spotify comment, and I'll do just that. So yeah, if you guys like this show and want to hear our other show where we talk about horror movies, that is The Horror Virgin. That's the only other podcast I am on, but Paige is also on Cult Podcast, which you can find at Cult Podcast. And you can find us on social media. I am at Todd J. Awesome, literally everywhere. Paige is at Paige Wesley on Instagram.
No, it's at Rampage Wesley on Instagram and TikTok, at Paige Wesley on Twitter.
That's right. All right. So that's where you can find Paige. If you want to find the show, we are at Romancing the Pod Show, right?
Yep, Romancing Pod Show on Twitter.
Well, and Instagram, right?
And Instagram, but it's show SHO because character limits. If you start typing Romancing the Pod, it'll come up.
It'll definitely come up on Instagram. I don't know about Twitter because I haven't posted on Twitter in a hot ass minute. So like, who knows? But that is where you can find more of us. So yeah, guys, give us a follow. Support the show any way you can. We'd love it.
Smash that like button.
Hell yeah.
And that's going to be it for us. You guys, I'm Paige.
And I'm Todd.
Keep it ooky spooky.
Yeah. Have an amazing week, guys.
Oh shit, wrong show. Whatever.
I get why you're confused though, because it is Lisa Frankenstein.
You complete us.
Yeah, zombie pletion. Bye. Zombie and Clyde is my next movie, nerds.
La 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 la.